Thunder rolls over the jagged peaks, marking the final moments of a bloody war. A lone, blood-stained sword stands amidst a graveyard of fallen warriors, as lightning tears through the dark clouds. Perched on a throne of stone and gore, the leader of the Sun and Moon cult watches the carnage with a twisted sense of pride. He smiles, showing off shark-like teeth as he mocks the last man standing, calling his survival fascinating. Nam Yongsun stares back through a mask of blood, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Even with his left arm missing, and his body failing him, the palace lord of the southern heavenly palace refuses to yield. He spits the word back at the demon. Fascinating, he doesn't see anything entertaining about this massacre. He remembers the moment his disciples first reported the cult's arrival in Anhui province. To him, the sword of a righteous warrior isn't just a weapon, it's a sacred weight. It bears the responsibility of an upright path and refuses to compromise, even in the face of death. He once stood before his entire sect, promising that no one among them would ever be treated as a mere commoner. But now the courtyard is silent, filled only with the bodies of those who followed his teachings to the end. He forces his hand to tighten around his sword hilt, the metal slick with his own blood. His disciples lived up to his word, now it's his turn to do the same. He lets out a roar of defiance, his voice echoing over the mountain. The men of the southern heavenly palace never retreated, dying only after fulfilling their duty to the martial path. A massive shockwave tears through the ground, sending debris flying. Yongsun marches toward the stone throne, his aura flaring as he prepares for the final exchange. He demands to know how a monster could dare to call this tragedy entertaining. The cult leader doesn't offer an answer, his face a terrifying mask of glee. Yongsun's hand trembles from exhaustion, but he forces his fingers to lock into place. He swings his blade in a wide arc, a desperate move from a man with nothing left to lose. The demon mocks him, asking if he can truly handle the consequences of his last stand. Yongsun's gaze remains fixed, his resolution unshakable as he faces the end. The cult leader presses his palms together, gathering a chaotic, dark energy between them. Before the demonic leader could even unleash his dark arts, Yongsun blitzed forward, a mere blur of shadow appearing right before his eyes. Yongsun strikes with everything he has, his blade cutting through the thick demonic aura. The impact is so violent it blurs the very air around them. A spray of blood marks a direct hit, though it's unclear who took the worst of it. Yongsun's expression is one of pure agony and focus. Even with his head severed from his body, the cult leader kept rambling on about the eternal destiny of the Black Sun and the Crimson Moon. Yongsun's eye narrows, his mind blocking out the noise as he waits for a single opening. He launches a final desperate strike, sending his opponent reeling back. A demonic face of energy screams in the vortex, its features twisted in a hellish grin. A blinding white light erupts from the center of the clash, swallowing the mountainside. Everything is briefly lost in the sheer brilliance of the discharge. For a fleeting moment, a vision of a peaceful purple tree appears against a clear blue sky. But the dream is shattered as Yongsun falls to his knees, coughing up more blood. He looks at his broken weapon and accepts that a normal victory is out of reach. Mutual destruction, then. He casts one last glance at the bodies of his disciples, finding the strength for one final act. He drags his feet forward through the puddles of blood, each step a testament to his iron will. He collapses forward, preparing to trigger the technique that will end everything. Nam Yongsun kneels in the center of the battlefield, realizing the title of Sword Emperor is hollow now. He gasps for air, apologizing to his fallen disciples for failing to protect them. He looks up, his vision swimming as his strength leaves him. The clouds break, revealing a brief glimpse of the heavens above. He wonders if that sky was the very ideal he spent his whole life trying to reach. It's so blue and boundless, a cruel contrast to the blood-soaked earth beneath him. A sudden convulsion forces a stream of black blood from his throat. Regret fills his final thoughts, if only he had been just a little bit stronger. He asks the wind if they could have all seen this sky together if he'd fought harder. He closes his eyes, finally letting his consciousness fade into the dark. Voices call out to him from the void, but they aren't the ones he expects to hear. A heavy boot slams into his head, jolting him awake in a shower of dirt. He finds himself on the ground, his new body feeling incredibly small and frail. A bearded giant looms over him, screaming about him being a sluggish worm for sleeping on duty. He stares up in shock, wondering how he could possibly still be alive. Another blow lands before he can even process where he is. Deoxym berates him for being ungrateful after they took in an orphan with blocked meridians. The boy curls into a ball, trying to shield his face from the relentless assault. Memories of his final duel flash before his eyes, confirming this isn't a dream. He grits his teeth as the soul of the Sword Emperor stirs within this weak vessel. He realizes his final act of will might have actually brought about a heaven-defying miracle. Deoxym winds up for another kick, ready to crush the kid's ribs. But this time, the strike is caught by a small, firm hand. The bully freezes, his face twisting in confusion. He can't believe the strength coming from the boy who was groaning in pain just yesterday. Mumyong stands up, a murderous intent radiating from his small frame as his eye begins to glow. His gaze sharpens with the focus of a veteran grandmaster. Deoxym breaks into a cold sweat, paralyzed by the sudden shift in the air. The bully stumbles back, his bravado completely crumbling. The protagonist looks down at the man who has spent years tormenting this body. His eyes fixated on the sword sheathed at the bully's hip. His eyes are cold and unrelenting, focused solely on his target. He tells Deoxym that someone who torments the defenseless is unworthy of wielding a sword. The other attendants watch from the background, mocking their leader for being defied by a mere servant. Deoxym's rage boils over as he remembers the kid's pathetic, cursed condition. He grits his teeth, his pride wounded in front of his subordinates. He lunges forward with a roar, ready to strike the boy down. Mumyong counters the charge with ease, his movements fluid and precise. In one swift motion, he draws the blade from its sheath. A single flash of light severs the bully's arm in an instant. The surrounding attendants gape in pure horror at the sight. No one can believe that the weak boy they knew just performed a high-level martial feat. Deoxym collapses to the parched earth, clutching the mangled stump of his arm as blood sprays the ground. Mumyong gazes down with a cold, predatory focus, his voice cutting through the air like a blade as he demands Deoxym look at him. The once proud bully is reduced to a quivering heap, his life's blood pooling around him in the dirt. Tears and snot stream down Deoxym's face as the crushing reality of his defeat sinks in. To the trembling man, the boy's silhouette no longer looks like a frail servant, but like a towering titan of war. This man is not Mumyong, Deoxym gasps, finally sensing the ancient soul dwelling within the youth. Every trace of the timid servant has vanished, replaced by a gaze that has seen 1,000 battlefields. In the distance, the compound stands quiet, unaware of the shadow looming over its walls. Sun and moon cultists wait in the shadows of the hills, their masked faces hiding any trace of emotion. The leader of the Sun and Moon cult gives his final orders, making it clear their priority is the one with blocked meridians. His black eyes glow with a murderous light as he delivers a simple, chilling command. "Kill them all," he whispers, dark energy swirling around him like a shroud of death. Back in the courtyard, Mumyong stands motionless over his former tormentor, his posture perfect. A ghostly silver light flickers in his eye, the unmistakable mark of a master's concentrated intent. "I'm going to die," Deoxym thinks, his heart hammering against his ribs in pure animal terror. He slams his forehead into the dirt, begging for mercy from the child he used to kick for sport. His hands shake violently as he fumbles inside his robes for any bribe that might save his life. He slides a heavy bag of coins across the ground, pleading for a forgiveness he never once showed. Mumyong looms over him, the stolen sword reflecting the cold light of the afternoon sun. "You expect me to forgive you?" he asks, his voice dripping with a dangerous, quiet fury. He vividly remembers the 5 years of starvation and the constant, senseless beatings he endured at Deoxym's hands. He recalls the agony of his seizures and how Deoxym would only laugh while stomping on his defenseless body. The other servants watch in paralyzed silence, terrified that the boy's wrath will turn toward them next. From the edge of the crowd, the unknown woman in bamboo hat observes the scene with sharp, calculating eyes. "I may be different now," Mumyong mutters, his gaze piercing through Deoxym's soul. "But this body still remembers the weight of every strike you landed," he continues, towering over the bully. Deoxym lets out a strangled whimper, his eyes bulging as he looks up at his impending doom. Cold sweat pours down his face as he realizes no amount of gold can buy back his life today. With a decisive, merciless swing, Mumyong brings the steel blade down. A spray of crimson paints the air as the debt of 5 years is settled in a single heartbeat. He declares that those who abuse their power are unworthy of carrying a warrior's weapon. The mysterious woman's eyes widen in disbelief as she hears the young boy's words. She recognizes the creed. It belongs to the Changchen Society, a legendary group the boy should know nothing about. Mumyong turns and begins to walk away, leaving the corpse of his oppressor in the dust of the courtyard. He looks up at the vast sky, wondering what kind of future awaits a ghost in a new world. "Now then, what should I do?" he muses, realizing he has no home to return to. A piercing, blood-curdling scream shatters his contemplation, making him whip his head around in alarm. A man sprints through the village outskirts, his face a mask of absolute, unadulterated fear. "Help me, save me," he shrieks, reaching out toward anything that might offer sanctuary. Before he can take another step, a sun and moon cultist blurred by speed carves through him like paper. Mumyong's teeth clench in fury as he realizes a slaughter has begun in the compound. Panic erupts through the area as people scream about demons coming to claim their lives. A white-clad assassin from the sun and moon demonic cult looms, his eyes burning with a crimson, bloodthirsty light. On his chest, the mark of the black sun overlapping a red moon serves as a grim herald of the cult's return. Mumyong stares at the sigil, his mind racing as he recognizes the ancient enemy of his past life. An ominous, suffocating purple aura pours from the cultist's body, tainting the very air with malice. It is unmistakably demonic chi, he realizes, the familiar scent of dark energy triggering his old battle instincts. He grits his teeth, haunted by the memory of the bloody war where he believed both he and the cult had perished together. The cultists strike without mercy, their blades carving through the defenseless servants as they block off the area. Mumyong's eyes narrow as he overhears their commanders shout to find the one with blocked meridians. The realization hits him like a physical blow. It is no coincidence. These demons have come specifically for him. Fury boils within him as he watches them harm innocent people, his hand tightening around the hilt of his sword. Standing at the edge of the compound, he gazes toward the gate where the shadow-clad killers stand over their prey. A phalanx of red-eyed warriors waits, their presence a suffocating weight upon the survivors. Despite the overwhelming odds, Mumyong begins to step forward, his resolve hardening into cold steel. "Mumyong, run!" His fellow servants shriek, begging him to flee before the demons spot him. He ignores their cries, his gaze fixed solely on the enemy as he continues his steady, deliberate march. "Once you draw a sword," he mutters, glancing back with a look of ancient authority, "you must know the proper time to use it." The servants can only gape in confusion, unable to understand why the weak boy they knew is walking towards certain death. Sensing a new challenger, the cultists launch themselves forward with supernatural speed and lethal intent. Mumyong knows his current body is frail, pathetic, and utterly devoid of the internal energy he once wielded. Even so, he thinks, his fingers finding the perfect grip on the leather-wrapped hilt. He raises the blade high, his spirit flaring with the indomitable pride of the man who was once the Sword Emperor. From her vantage point in the brush, the unknown woman in bamboo hat watches the boy's transformation with growing shock. She recognizes the form immediately. It is the stance of the three-talent swordsmanship, a style he should never have known. As light begins to gather around his blade, the soul of the Sword Emperor fully awakens within the servant's body. From the shadows, the unknown woman in a bamboo hat watches the boy. She notices his Beihui acupoint is literally heating up from his extreme level of focus. She can't believe a mere servant is capable of reaching this state of concentration. To her, it's practically impossible. Mumyong isn't bothered by the 7 cultists surrounding him. He quickly counts them, 3 on his left, 4 on the right. He raises his blade high, centering his weight for the first strike. The first cultist lunges in, but Mumyong brings his sword down with crushing precision. He mutters the name of the first technique, Heaven. He stomps his lead foot, grounding his power into the dirt. A vertical flash of light cleaves through the air as the first enemy is silenced. The cultist's body hits the ground behind him, but Mumyong is already looking toward the next targets. 4 more rush him at once, their blades drawn and ready to kill. Mumyong flows into a series of rapid horizontal slashes, his movements a blur of steel. He transitions to the second part of the cycle, Earth. He parries multiple strikes simultaneously, his blade ringing out as it deflects their weapons. Another cultist leaps in with a curved blade, trying to catch him off guard. Mumyong doesn't blink, his gaze locked on the opening in the man's defense. He calls out the final strike, Human. He thrusts forward, the tip of his sword finding its mark before the cultist can even react. He finishes the movement with a sharp exhale, his stance perfectly balanced. The strain is already starting to show, as he winces from a sharp pain in his chest. The last of the first squad collapses in a heap of blood and white fabric. The dying cultist stares at him in pure terror, unable to believe a monster like this existed in such a place. Mumyong stands still for a moment, trying to catch his breath. He looks down at his sword, coated in the blood of his enemies. The entire yard is a mess of bodies, 7 men taken down in seconds by a single boy. Watching from cover, the woman is stunned. He used nothing but the basic 3 talent swordsmanship to achieve that. To her, there's only one explanation. This kid is a natural-born sword genius. Mumyong's senses tingle as he feels more eyes on him from above. High on the rooftops, a second, more elite group of cultists in black gear appears. He looks up, realizing the fight isn't over yet. The cult squad leader looks down in disbelief, wondering how his entire first squad got wiped out by a single wanderer. Mumyong tries to steady his grip, but his body is starting to shake. A sudden violent spasm racks his chest, forcing a pained gasp from his throat. He drops to his knees, using his sword as a crutch as he clutches at his heart. It hits him then. The original owner of this body had 9 yin blocked meridians, and the strain has triggered a seizure. Of all the times for his body to fail him, it had to be now. The cultists on the roof see him collapse and realize he's vulnerable. The leader confirms it. This is the boy with the blocked meridians they were sent to find. With a murderous glint in his eye, the leader gives the order, capture him alive. The cultists leap from the roof, descending on the helpless Mumyong like birds of prey. The cult squad leader isn't taking any chances. He orders his men to bring the boy in alive. A group of cultists dives from the rooftops, closing in on their target from all sides. Suddenly, a massive bolt of blue lightning tears through the sky. The energy lashes out, catching the attackers midair and throwing them back in a chaotic explosion. Mumyong can barely believe what he's seeing. Blue lightning. On the roof nearby stands the unknown woman in bamboo hat, her blade drawn and humming with power. She looks completely calm, even as the storm rages around her. The squad leader recognizes her immediately. It's the Black Cloud playful lady from the Changchan Society. One of the cultists is taken out instantly by a precise strike to the throat. She leaps down into the courtyard, standing alone against the remaining masked killers. The leader knows her reputation, but he won't abandon the mission. He orders his men to buy him some time. The cultists surround her, swords ready as they prepare to swarm the intruder. She doesn't look bothered, casually readying her blade for the next move. Her eyes flare with a bright cyan light as sparks dance across her skin. In a blur of motion and electricity, she tears through the crowd. She moves with a grace that defies logic, leaving trails of light behind her. Mumyong watches her feet, noticing the specific pattern of her steps. His eyes widen in pure shock as he recognizes the technique. More cultists fall, their lives snuffed out as she passes by them like a ghost. Mumyong realizes this isn't just any high-level movement, it's the infinite step. That technique belongs to his old sect, the Southern Heavenly Palace, and he has no idea how she learned it. While he's distracted, the cult squad leader looms over him like a shadow. The masked man reaches out, intent on dragging Mumyong away before the woman can finish her work. Mumyong tries to resist, but his body is too weak to fight back against the leader's grip. Just as the leader thinks he's got his prize, a pillar of light descends from above. The woman strikes with the force of a thunderclap, her blade severing the leader's arm in a single flash. He barely has time to react to the pain. She follows through with another lethal stroke, forcing the leader back. She stands over Mumyong with a playful smile, telling the cultists to keep their filthy hands off her new find. Mumyong is trembling, his physical limits completely pushed past the breaking point. The strain of the blocked meridians finally wins, and his vision starts to spin. As he starts to fall, she catches him with a concerned look on her face. He can hear her voice, but he's too far gone to answer. Everything fades to black as he slips into unconsciousness. When he finally opens his eyes, he's in a quiet, unfamiliar room. He sits up with a start, his hand instinctively going to his chest as he gasps for air. "You're awake," the woman from before is sitting right there watching him. She gives him a warm smile that's a far cry from the lethal warrior on the rooftops. Mumyong realizes he's in a safe house, and he's finally out of immediate danger. He knows she's mastered the infinite step, but her sword style is completely different from anything he remembers from his past. She explains that she used her own energy to suppress the cold chi caused by his blocked meridians. Mumyong is stunned. 9 yin blocked meridians are usually something only women are born with. Mumyong is still wrapping his head around the fact that he's a man with a condition usually only found in women. He's even more impressed that she was able to suppress the freezing cold energy inside him so effectively. Judging by her voice and presence, he figures she must be a young rising star in the martial world. She realizes she's being a bit informal and apologizes for her lack of manners. She finally reaches up to remove the bamboo hat and the veil covering her face. She lets her long dark hair fall loose, adjusting it with a practiced hand. Without the veil, she looks like a completely different person, much friendlier than the lethal warrior on the roofs. She officially introduces herself as Li Siha from the Changchen Society and asks Mumyong to join her. She makes a bold offer: become her disciple, and she'll help him find a way to cure his blocked meridians. Mumyong is instantly wary, wondering why a powerful master would show such sudden kindness to a total stranger. Siha explains that she saw the marks his sword left behind during the earlier fight. Even when facing literal demons while on the verge of a seizure, he never retreated, and that earned her respect. However, he was just curious because he had never heard of anyone actually being cured of the 9 yin ailment, so he was very eager to see it. She seems almost excited by the challenge, flashing a confident grin at the boy. To help him, she's willing to share her secret, the Heavenly Thunder True Yang technique. It's a mental cultivation art that gathers solar energy, manifesting as the blue lightning he saw earlier. She plans to teach him this art so he can force his blocked meridians open one by one. Mumyong knows she's right. Simply learning a basic technique won't be enough to fix his failing body. Normally, the cold yin qi would accumulate far faster than any yang qi, leading to an early death. But since Mumyong is a man, he has a natural advantage that a woman in his position wouldn't have. If he can use that innate energy alongside her technique and some spiritual elixirs, there might be a chance. He admits to himself that her theory is solid, especially since her lightning art is clearly a supreme art. He starts thinking bigger. If he can absorb the energy trapped in his meridians, he might even surpass his old life. The idea of reaching a realm beyond his previous peak is enough to keep his attention focused. Still, he has to ask the most important question on his mind. Why would she want to take a lowly sword boy like him as her personal disciple? She just gives him a knowing smile, having expected the suspicion. She throws his own words back at him. Those who don't take responsibility for their martial arts shouldn't hold a sword. She doesn't care about his rank. She wants a disciple with a righteous heart who doesn't swing their blade lightly. Mumyong stares at her, silenced by the absolute sincerity in her voice. He clenches his fist as he mulls over the concept of a righteous heart. Testing her, he asks what would happen if he decided to turn down her offer. She doesn't get angry, simply explaining that the cult will never stop hunting him down. He'd be forced into a life of seclusion under their protection just to stay alive. Mumyong pushes further, wondering why her organization would go to such great lengths for one person. She looks him in the eye and tells him that if they didn't protect what they can, they'd be no different from the demons. She speaks about how many people are willing to sacrifice the few for the many, calling it foolish. Most people would choose the so-called greater good, but she has a different perspective. She wants to be the person who holds on to the small things that everyone else chooses to leave behind. Mumyong looks at her, truly seeing the kind of person she is for the first time. Someone who values the small things. He finds himself actually respecting her. He realizes she's more than worthy of being his master, and he's finally ready to make his choice. Mumyong admits he was initially suspicious of her sudden offer and asks for her forgiveness. Lee Si-ha just smiles, asking if he's finally come to a decision after all his thinking. He looks her in the eye and gives her a firm answer. He will follow her. She's pleased, nodding that he clearly didn't make the choice lightly. However, she feels that calling him Mumyong is a bit impersonal and asks if he has another name. Mumyong looks down, thinking about how that brute Deoxym was the one who gave him that name. Si-ha points out that if he wants to truly escape the demonic cult's shadow, a new name is essential. Mumyong agrees, realizing he must carry on the pride and legacy of the Southern Heavenly Palace in this new life. He decides his surname will be Namgung, as a tribute to the sect and its fallen disciples. For his first name, he chooses Jun, meaning to bring to an end, vowing to finally destroy the sun and moon demonic cult. Si-ha is happy to help him choose if he didn't have one in mind, but he beats her to it. He speaks it aloud for the first time. His name is Namgung Jun. She repeats it to herself, testing how it sounds. With a warm smile, she admits that it's actually a very good name. Jun kneels before her, formalizing the bond between student and teacher. He bows his head low, officially offering his greetings to his new master. Si-ha watches him with a soft, satisfied expression. The boy remains in a deep bow, showing his complete respect for the woman who saved him. She acknowledges him as her disciple and tells him she wants to jump right into things. Her excitement is palpable as she declares that his martial arts training starts immediately. Jun is taken aback by her sudden intensity, wondering if he's in for a rough time. The scene shifts to a quiet, secluded house nestled among the rugged mountain peaks. Inside, she begins with the basics, understanding the core principles of all martial arts. She asks if he's ready to learn the complex formula for the heavenly thunder true yang technique. As night falls over the mountains, the soft glow of a candle illuminates the room. She places a heavy book on the table, the secret manual containing her most powerful technique. Jun mentions his full name again, and she admits she's never heard a surname like Namgung before. She starts explaining the text, assuming his past as a servant gave him at least a basic education. He confirms he can read, his focus entirely on the ancient script before him. Looking at her, he reflects on the fact that she's a generational genius who reached the pinnacle of her craft so young. He knows her incredible talent will be their greatest weapon when they eventually face the cult. In fact, he suspects her potential might even be greater than the talent he possessed in his previous life. She points to a specific verse, asking him what he thinks it implies about the nature of internal energy. Jun studies the passage, nodding that it suggests driving energy through points rather than just guiding it. His master is stunned by his quick wit, asking how on earth he could be so clever. She's amazed by his comprehension, thinking he's the living embodiment of someone who understands 10 things from just one lesson. Jun speaks with such depth that she feels like she's debating with a seasoned martial arts expert. She can't help but smile, realizing she's found someone truly special to pass her arts to. Outside, the moon rises high above the trees, signaling that many hours have passed in study. She finally looks toward the window and asks if he's starting to feel the exhaustion of the long day. To her surprise, he stands up, claiming he's already memorized every single verse and wants to begin cultivating now. She ponders his eagerness, warning him that just knowing the words doesn't mean he'll sense chi immediately. Lee Si-ha reassures Jun, telling him to take it slow and that she'll be there to help if anything goes wrong. She points out that even the most gifted martial artists typically spend a full week just trying to sense chi for the first time. Jun focuses inward, noting the peculiar nature of his new vessel. To his own amazement, a single breath is all it takes for the first stirrings of energy to manifest. He is stunned by the sheer capacity and strength of his meridians, realizing they are far beyond anything he's ever seen. Sensing the shift, his master stares at him in disbelief, her mind racing at the thought of her disciple being such a peerless genius. He observes the warmth of the solar yang qi pooling in his danshin, its presence amplified by the cold yin energy already within him. Jun opens his eyes, a calm focus settled over his features as he completes the first step of his cultivation. Si-ha can't contain her excitement, clapping her hands and showering him with praise for his incredible feat. She extends a hand, inviting him to observe and mimic the complex way she circulates her own internal energy. Crackling blue electricity dances around her fist as she demonstrates her technique's power. She asks if he thinks he can replicate it, while Jun ponders the traditional wisdom of keeping one's true power hidden. Deciding that his master deserves his full honesty, he channels his chi and manifests the exact same lightning. Si-ha is left speechless, her jaw practically dropping as she watches the impossible unfold right before her eyes. She smiles to herself, feeling as though she's used up a lifetime's worth of good fortune to find a student this gifted. Encouraged by his success, Jun asks if she will also teach him the fundamentals of swordsmanship and agile footwork. She agrees immediately, telling him they should head to the Changchun Society to find techniques that truly complement his style. The young man nods, his mind already turning toward the potential of learning entirely new ways to fight. A dark memory of his previous life's end flashes through his mind, a field of corpses and the total destruction of his former sect. He clenches his fist, determined to forge a path that surpasses his past and ensures that such a tragedy never happens again. The duo sets out on their journey, their footsteps echoing softly on the dusty mountain path. As they walk, Si-ha begins to explain the history and significance of the organization they are heading toward. She describes the Changchun Society as a desperate alliance, born from the ashes of once great families. It is a gathering of survivors, all of whom have lost their homes and kin to the merciless expansion of the sun and moon demonic cult. As they hike up the misty mountain, Namgung Jun asks if chivalry and heroism are really the core values of the Changchun Society. He looks skeptical, wondering if wiping out the sun and moon demonic cult and getting revenge shouldn't be the top priority instead. The unknown woman in bamboo hat explains that their first leader believed lives saved by heroes shouldn't just be tossed back into the fire of hatred. She tells him that those who survived chose to use their lives to help others instead of just seeking blood. Pursuing chivalry over revenge became their way of life. They arrive at a massive, ornate library where scholars are busy documenting scrolls. The woman explains that the library houses techniques from destroyed sects and arts freely donated by those who joined the society. She stops walking and looks down, mentioning that her own family was also destroyed by the demonic cult. She stays quiet for a moment, her face hidden under the wide brim of her hat. She eventually says the martial arts she learned came from both her family's legacy and the society's vast collection. She assures Jun that he'll find something there that perfectly fits his own style as well. Jun clenches his fist as he realizes the lost techniques of his own southern heavenly palace likely ended up here the same way. He gazes out at the distant peaks, coming to terms with the fact that over 200 years have passed since his palace fell. Even as the demonic cult grew in power, the society managed to establish its own footing in the world. Jun apologizes for bringing up such painful memories, but the woman just lets out a dry laugh. She tells him not to worry about it, though she admits showing her disciple something so embarrassing was a mistake. She changes the subject, asking if he knows the four wonders of Huangshan. When he lists them off correctly, the pines, the sea of clouds, the rocks, and the hot springs, she's genuinely impressed by his smarts. She explains that the society is hidden right in plain sight among these wonders. She tells him to step exactly where she steps, as they're about to pass through a hidden formation. Jun freezes in disbelief as they emerge on the other side. Standing before them is a grand gate labeled Changchen Society, built on the exact same grounds as the southern heavenly palace from his past life. A disciple bows deeply as they pass, welcoming back the heavens' sword hall master. Jun notices all the members outside are wearing bamboo hats and asks if there's some special meaning behind the uniform. She just gives him a playful look and says he'll find out soon enough. They make their way up the main stairs where two men are waiting at the top. The Mukyang department head, Yun Jeonjong, stares down at them, asking if this is the kid he's heard so much about. The hall master slaps a hand on Jun's shoulder, proudly introducing him as her new disciple. Yun Jeonjong studies Jun's frail frame, nodding that she must really like the boy to take him in. Because of her high recommendation, he decides to waive every entry test except for the martial arts exam. To everyone's shock, Jun steps forward and shouts that he's ready to take the test right now. The hall master is surprised, pointing out that he's only just started his training with the Heavenly Thunder True Yang formula. Yun Jeonjong likes the kid's confidence. He calls for a senior disciple to step forward, telling Jun he just needs to endure a single strike from this man. A sturdy man with a buzz cut named Gang Mong walks down the stairs. Jun looks at his empty hands and realizes he doesn't even have a sword to defend himself with. Siha smiles and hands him her own ornate blade, telling him to use it for the test. Gang Mong draws his weapon and prepares to strike as Jun offers a polite thank you. Gang Mong gives him a cold stare, warning the boy not to try showing off by just dodging the hit. He kicks off the step with a sudden burst of speed. Gang Mong leaps into the air with his sword raised high, shouting a final warning that the strike could be lethal. Jun remains calm, gripping the borrowed sword as the veteran warrior closes in for the kill. Jun swings with incredible focus, his eyes sharp as he mirrors the attack perfectly. The blades clash with a sharp ring that echoes through the entire courtyard. Despite his frail appearance, Jun manages to shift his weight and redirect the heavy blow with ease. Gang Mong's eyes widen as he feels his strength being pulled away and neutralized. Jun doesn't just stop there. He flows right into a counter-movement that looks strangely familiar to his opponent. Gang Mong realizes in horror that the kid is using his own technique against him. The movement is so clean and precise that Gang Mong can't even find an opening to recover himself. He gripped his sword tightly, but the blade still trembled uncontrollably, a testament to the immense force of the previous blow. He can't believe a kid with such a weak-looking body could produce this much sheer force. It's clear that this isn't just raw physical power, it's pure skill and expert internal energy control. A thin layer of pure sword chi coats the edge of Jun's borrowed blade as he finishes the move. Seha starts clapping enthusiastically, thrilled to see her new disciple outclass a senior member. Gang Mong is left speechless, wondering how someone who claims to only know the basics can pull this off. He takes a step back and admits defeat, knowing he's been completely outmatched. He stares at the ground, humbled that a rookie member just bested him in front of everyone. Impressed by the boy's talent, Elder Muck slowly descended the grand staircase, showering him with endless praise and expressing immense expectations for his future. Everyone froze in disbelief as he spoke, for Elder Muck rarely personally praised a newcomer who had only just taken the entrance exam. The hall master is slightly relieved, thinking she almost lost her prized disciple to the society leader himself. Lord Muck stands tall before the boy and asks for his official name. Jun introduces himself, and Lord Muck officially welcomes him into the society as a one-cloud rank member. Seha beams with pride, already encouraging Jun to aim for the 4-cloud rank soon. Gang Mong stays quiet, knowing that ranks in this place are strictly earned by the number of clouds one holds. He holds out a hand, admitting that he learned a valuable lesson from their match. He hands Jun an official medallion, a circular piece of silver with a single cloud carved into it. Jun takes it and offers a respectful bow, acknowledging the senior's sportsmanship. With the formalities finished, Seha asks if Jun is finally allowed into the society's repository. Lord Muck gives his permission, and the woman immediately grabs Jun's arm to drag him along. As the duo runs off, Lord Muck watches them with a contemplative look on his face. He remarks that the society itself must be the fertile soil to help this giant tree reach the heavens. Gang Mang just stares at his own hand, repeating the boy's name over and over in his head. He's still left wondering just what kind of monster it takes to deliver a strike like that. A red mark was imprinted on the palm of his hand. Lord Muck turned to him and suggested that it was time for him to get a new sword. Then he pointed down at the crack on the man's sword. They arrive at the Self-Reflection Martial Archive, the massive repository of the society's techniques. The interior is staggering. Jun thinks it even puts his old palace library to shame. He walks through the silent halls, surrounded by thousands of ancient scrolls. Lee Si-ha explains their open-door policy when it comes to these secret manuals. The goal is to build strength together so they can stand against the demonic cult. Jun realizes they don't use locks. They use high standards to filter who is qualified to read. He thinks the name, Self-Reflection, is actually pretty fitting for a place like this. Si-ha offers to help him choose a style that fits his unique condition. But Jun politely shuts her down, insisting on picking for himself. She stares at him for a second, measuring the boy's resolve. Then she just gives in with a small smile. She agrees, but tells him he'd better show her whatever he picks later. As evening falls over the society, the real research begins. The library clerk watches in horror as Jun starts piling up scrolls like they're scrap paper. The guy is genuinely stressed out by the absolute mess being made in his archive. Before leaving to attend to some urgent business, Si-ha left Jun in the care of the librarian for a while. She asks him to guide her disciple if he gets lost, leaving the clerk baffled. Another book hits the floor as Jun tears through the shelves. The clerk is convinced the kid isn't even reading them at this speed. He's just tossing one manual after another onto a growing mountain of books. He finally decides he has to step in and try to give the boy some actual advice. Instead of listening, Jun just reaches for a wooden training sword on the rack. The clerk is stunned into silence as the boy prepares to strike. In a total blur of motion, Jun performs a series of movements that defy logic. The clerk can't even process the level of skill he's witnessing. He realizes Jun wasn't just browsing. He was hunting for every fast sword manual in the room. Blue sparks begin to crackle and surge along the length of the wooden blade. Then the entire area is engulfed in a massive explosion of light. The shockwave sends the clerk's scrolls and brushes flying everywhere. He's left gulping in total shock, staring at the aftermath. It was over in a literal flash of lightning. The clerk looks at Jun, wondering what kind of monster he just let in here. Suddenly, a massive, dark presence looms right behind the desk. The clerk slowly turns around, sensing something terrifying. It's the sword demon, and he looks like he's ready for blood. Jun turns his head, sensing the newcomer's intense and oppressive energy. The senior master asks if that was actually demonic chi he just felt. He stands over the mess, staring down the kid with the wooden sword. Jun narrows his eyes, wondering how someone with that kind of demonic aura even got inside. The clerk jumps in, desperately trying to explain that Jun is just a new recruit who doesn't know any better. The sword demon isn't interested in excuses and tells him to get lost before he gets hurt. He's actually curious and asks about that weird swordsmanship Jun was using earlier. Jun just deadpans that it's a little something he's currently developing on his own. The master admits he's never seen anything like it in the society's entire martial archive. He can tell the kid isn't lying, which just makes the whole thing even more interesting. "Show me your techniques," he says, basically challenging the boy right then and there. The clerk is still panicking, shouting that the kid only just learned the most basic cultivation. The master tells the fool to just shut up and watch how a real fight looks. Left with no other choice, the clerk just prays that a hall master shows up to stop the madness. Jun doesn't flinch and even demands a spiritual elixir as a reward if he manages to win. The sword demon laughs, loving how straightforward and ballsy the kid is compared to other recruits. He promises not to use any internal energy, but Jun tells him he might find it necessary anyway. That kind of flex just makes the master laugh even harder as he draws his blade. The sword demon calls him a crazy bastard and gets into a ready stance. Battle on, Jun opens with a blindingly fast strike called Single Flash. The master is shocked by the sheer power of the impact against his guard. He lets out a shout as he prepares to counter the kid's incredible speed. A massive collision of steel sends shockwaves through the entire library. Jun sticks the landing after a quick aerial recovery, looking completely unfazed. He starts analyzing the flow, preparing to weave in the Sasson 12 swords. He's layering different techniques on top of each other as he prepares his next move. He leaps into the air, the wooden sword crackling with sudden energy. The sword demon's eyes go wide as Jun manages to turn a single slash into 3. They clash again, and the master can barely believe what's happening. He realizes the kid is actually modifying his own techniques right in the middle of their duel. Jun thinks the blade feels right, like his old senses are finally starting to wake up. But his current body was born weak, and he knows it won't hold up for long. He needs to be even faster and more precise to end this quickly. He adjusts his footwork by just half an inch to find the perfect angle for the strike. Then he unleashes the 12th technique, Eternal Lightning Arc. Lightning blue energy fills the entire room as the two warriors collide. The master is actually grinning now, thrilled to find a real challenge in a kid. "This is fun," he shouts, his eyes burning with excitement. Jun remains focused, his eyes entirely locked on the next path. His eyes glow with an intense, otherworldly light. He can already see exactly where the next move needs to go. He's holding what feels like a forged lightning flash in his hands. The sword demon stands his ground as Jun prepares to launch himself forward. He channels the energy to become a straight bolt of lightning. He finds the optimal sword path and commits to the strike. In a flash, Jun leaped high into the air. His sword was engulfed in a violent, blinding light as he unleashed his final strike. Jun unleashes the finale, 13th technique, Single Bolt of Thunder. The entire library lights up as a literal bolt of lightning strikes down through the ceiling. The blade began to shatter as its master unleashed a technique that pushed his body beyond its limits. On the other side, the sword demon couldn't believe he had just been pushed back by a kid who hadn't even finished his basic training. Worse, he realized he was actually forced to use his internal energy just to survive that last hit. He takes a moment to process just how close that duel really was. "I have no choice but to acknowledge him," the master thinks, looking at the boy standing before him. He's convinced Jun was born with some kind of monstrous talent for the sword. He asks about the techniques Jun used. They flowed together so perfectly it felt like a brand new style. He asks if there are 13 techniques in total, and Jun calmly confirms his guess. "What do you call it?" the master asks, clearly impressed by the kid's creativity. Jun doesn't hesitate for a second. 13. "Thunder lightning swords," he says, giving the style a name on the spot. The clerk is practically falling out of his chair, unable to believe what he's hearing. The sword demon realizes the kid actually used their duel to temper and complete his own forms. He thinks this is a sword art worthy of at least a 3 clouds ranking, which is insane for a rookie. "I like you," he says with a predatory grin. "Come join me at Mukrian Hall." Jun just stares at him, having no idea what a Mukrian Hall even is. Suddenly a voice cuts through the room. "What are you talking about?" Lee Si-ha walks in, looking absolutely radiant in her blue and white robes. "Since when did you start stealing other people's disciples?" The sword demon just smirks and says he took a liking to the kid, asking if there's a problem. Si-ha isn't playing around. She tells him Jun is her disciple, and he'd better not lay a finger on him. The tension in the room skyrockets as their spiritual pressures clash, looking like a tiger fighting a snake. The sword demon asks if she really wants to throw down right here in the library. Jun steps in and tells both of them to just stop it already. Then he drops a bombshell: "I will go to Mukrian Hall." Everyone freezes, but then Jun adds when the time comes. He clarifies that since Lord Muck is interested, he's willing to spar with him every once in a while. The clerk is having a literal heart attack. What is that crazy bastard saying now? Even the two masters look confused. "What did you just say?" they ask in unison. Then the sword demon just starts laughing like a maniac. He finds Jun's audacity hilarious. "Ha, now that's something interesting. Don't make me wait too long." He tosses a small, ornate box over to Jun. "Take this," he says with a smirk. "I'm leaving," he says, turning his back on the group and heading out of the archive. Siha watches him go, her face a mask of pure annoyance. That annoying bastard," she mutters under her breath as he disappears. She walks over to Jun and asks what the master gave him. Jun says it's the elixir he promised. It's a white crane pill, perfect for someone who has just started cultivating internal energy. Jun asks what the deal was with Mukrian Hall, and why he isn't going straight to the Heaven's Sword Hall. She explains that new members have to go through an adjustment period where they compete against each other. Only the recruits who perform the best earn the right to choose which hall they eventually join. "That's why," she says, "even though you're my junior brother, I can't just hand you a spot in the Heaven's Sword Hall." Jun looks at the elixir box with determination. "Don't worry," he tells Siha, "I'll win this tournament and join the Heaven's Sword Hall." Night falls over the sprawling, quiet grounds of the Changchen society. Back in his room, Jun doesn't waste any time. He takes the white crane pill and prepares his body for the impact. Kug, the energy hits him like a tidal wave, far more intense than anything he's felt before. The backlash is immediate. His body, racked with the 9 yin-blocked meridians, struggles to contain the sudden surge of power. He forces himself into a meditative state, his breath hitching as he tries desperately to stabilize the swirling qi. He uses his solar yang qi as a shield, protecting his organs from the worst of the energy's internal fury. Slowly, the pain begins to recede. Through this agonizing process, his mastery over his lightning technique continues to improve. Hours later, the storm inside him finally subsides, leaving him completely drained. He knows he can't afford to be impatient. Even the smallest mistake could lead to a fatal qi deviation. Closing his eyes, he plans his next few days. "Starting tomorrow, I'll focus on building my physical foundation." The sun rises the next morning, signaling the start of his grueling preparation period. Out on the training grounds, the air is filled with the rhythmic sounds of wood hitting wood as the recruits practice their forms. Lord Muck watches from a distance, impressed by the sheer number of recruits the sect has managed to find this year. The official at his side notes that there are quite a few promising talents among them, all training with desperate intensity. Lord Muck's eyes wander over the crowd until he spots a particular young woman demonstrating her skills. "Her name is Dan Sohai," the official explains. "They say she has the talent to become a hall master one day." She looks skilled, but the official admits she still falls a bit short compared to the top genius of the year, Beek Raichung. Then Lord Muck's gaze shifts to a quiet corner of the yard. What about him? He sees Jun while everyone else is practicing complex sword forms. Jun is stuck doing basic squats and physical labor with heavy buckets. The disciples following Elder Muck laughed loudly. He's wasting his time on the basics when he should be honing his swordsmanship. At this rate, he won't last a single second. Lord Muck doesn't say anything, his expression unreadable as he studies the boys' unwavering focus. He decides it's time to test them. "It would be best to hold this placement test as a sparring tournament. I'll make the arrangements." 3 days later, the arena is set. The tournament that will decide Jun's future is about to begin. The crowd is buzzing, everyone waiting to see if any of these new recruits actually have what it takes. The big shots are all lined up on the balcony, watching the show from above. The announcer steps up to the podium to get the first match started. A heavy drum beat signals the beginning of the fight. The first pair is called up, Dan Sohai and Namgung Jun. Sohai tells him to draw his sword, warning that she won't go easy just because he's young. Jun doesn't even reach for his hilt, he just tells her there's no need. That immediately gets under her skin. She lunges at him, calling him an arrogant brat for underestimating her. Jun stays perfectly calm, tracking her every movement. One flash is all it takes. He shatters her blade in a single clash. She can't even process what just happened. Her sword is in pieces on the ground, and she's completely frozen in shock. The stadium goes silent for a second before the announcer declares Jun the winner. The other students are losing it. Nobody expected the top recruit to get folded that fast. Up on the balcony, Lee Si-ha and the Sword Demon are actually impressed by how much he's improved. Sohai is left trembling in the ring, realizing she never stood a chance. Jun just walks off like he didn't even break a sweat. The tournament keeps rolling through the brackets. Suddenly, everyone's attention shifts to the next heavy hitter arriving. It's the rising star of Shanxi. Beek Reicheng steps into the arena, looking completely indifferent to the crowd. As soon as the signal goes off, his opponent rushes in. The guy gets annoyed that Reicheng isn't even bothering to draw his weapon. But Reicheng is too fast, parrying the strike with his sheathed blade. He counters instantly, delivering a heavy blow with the hilt. The match is over before his opponent even knows what hit him. Reicheng looks like he's just going through the motions. He gives a cold side-eye to the spectators. Another one-strike victory sends the audience into a frenzy. The announcer calls it, Beek Reicheng takes the win. Jun watches him from the sidelines, noticing a quick glance from the silver-haired genius. He's actually smiling now. Things are finally getting interesting. Everyone crowds around the bracket board to see the final matchup. An official writes in Jun's name for the big finale. The other students are still whispering, wondering where this kid even came from. Lee Si-ha finds the whole situation hilarious. She can barely hold back a laugh watching everyone scramble to figure him out. She's definitely looking forward to seeing how this final match plays out. Finally, the day of the finals arrives. Reicheng locks eyes with his opponent as he steps into the ring. He notes that despite his frail appearance, there's something dangerous about this Namgung Jun guy. Reicheng can't stop thinking about Jun's earlier fight. He knows that kind of technique is way beyond what a normal recruit should have. Even the sword Chi Jun displayed was terrifyingly sharp and refined for someone his age. Despite the danger, the silver-haired youth tells himself he absolutely cannot afford to lose. He's fueled by a dark memory, the day masked assassins slaughtered his family while they desperately tried to protect him. Now, revenge is the only thing on his mind, and he needs this win to get the power he's after. Down in the arena, the two finalists lock eyes as a massive figure steps between them. It's Dan Yong-si, the muscular hall master of the Iron Tower, and he's personally refereeing this final clash. Jun just stands there, looking as calm and unbothered as ever. The master tells them both to fight with honor and leave it all in the ring as the final showdown begins. The final match is set. Namgung Jun and Beek Reicheng stand ready in the center of the arena as the signal is given to begin. Beek Reicheng studies his young opponent, nodding his build and guessing he must specialize in the heavy sword style. The boy shifts his stance, preparing to move with a sudden burst of speed. The genius swordsman doesn't hesitate for a second, lunging forward with his blade unsheathed, giving his opponent absolutely no chance to find an opening. He brings his sword down in a heavy overhead strike. Jun effortlessly dodges the blow, his movements fluid and light. Beek follows up with a series of quick slashes, but the boy is like a ghost, flipping and spinning away from every single strike. He's left baffled, wondering how a kid can be dodging his best moves so easily. Jun lands firmly on his feet, his posture shifting as he prepares to counterattack. Blue electricity begins to crackle around him as he readies the 13 thunder lightning swords. In a split second, he unleashes the first form, one flash. The boy tears through the arena like a literal bolt of lightning, a blur of motion crossing the stage. The force of the strike sends sparks flying, leaving the veteran warrior reeling in shock. Before anyone could even blink, Jun's strike shattered Beak's blade right in two. The crowd watches in stunned silence, their mouths hanging open at the display of power. Beak Raichung lowers his sword, the realization of his defeat sinking in. He admits that every martial artist needs a hidden trump card, and he clearly underestimated the boy. The man's hand is still shaking from the pure pressure of the exchange. He officially gives up the match, acknowledging Jun's superior skill. Jun maintains his composure and bows respectfully to his opponent. He offers a brief, good match before stepping back. The stadium erupts into thunderous applause for the new champion. Up in the VIP seats, the masters are in disbelief that a child won every single match with a single strike. Lee Siha claps along with the crowd, a satisfied smile on her face as she watches her disciple. The official raises the boy's hand and announces Namgung Jun as the winner of the tournament. The boy looks on calmly, seemingly unfazed by the victory. He's presented with his reward in a small, ornate box. It's a legendary Ha-Shu Wu root, and this one is over 300 years old. The boy gives a simple thank you, but his stoic attitude leaves the presenter wondering just who this kid really is. A master from Bissen Hall immediately approaches, bragging that they're one of the 3 strongest groups. He leans in, confident that the promise of prestige will win the boy over. He mentions their connection to the sword fragrance department, which oversees the entire society. Jun's thoughts are elsewhere. He knows he needs to rise to the position of Sword Lord if he wants to defeat the Sun-Moon demon cult. He looks back at the man with a blank expression, not at all moved by the pitch. Another master steps in, catching the first one off guard. The sword demon from Mukrian Hall is fired up, eager to claim a promising talent for himself. A third man from Jangpa Hall tries to undercut them both, promising to give the boy their full support. The 3 masters start arguing loudly right on the deck, each insisting their hall is the best choice. They're so busy fighting over him that they completely ignore the fact that the newcomer is just standing there watching. Finally, the boy interrupts their bickering, thanking them for their generous offers. Lee Siha remains seated nearby, looking confident and completely unfazed by the competition. The boy finishes his sentence, announcing to the shocked crowd that he's joining the Heaven's Sword Hall. The red-haired master clicks his tongue in annoyance, while the leader from Bissen Hall realizes the kid's aura actually comes from the Heavenly Thunder True Yang technique. Namgung Jun bows respectfully and formally requests to join the Heaven's Sword Hall, and Lee Siha doesn't waste a second granting him permission. Lee Siha watches with a small, satisfied smile as her newest disciple makes his commitment. High atop a misty mountain peak, the secluded complex of the Heaven's Sword Hall stands tall. Jun makes his way into the training grounds, finally arriving at his new home. The boy looks around the courtyard, knowing his journey here is just beginning. He's immediately met by a group of senior disciples who aren't about to let the newcomer settle in too easily. One of the seniors, Gong Jun Am, steps forward, saying he's heard quite a lot about the kid's reputation. Jun Am draws his blade with a cocky grin, eager to test the prodigy himself. He mentions he's particularly interested in seeing the fast sword everyone is talking about. He taunts Jun, wanting to see if he's actually worthy of the hall or just another weak newcomer. Jun just smiles back, telling him that a swordsman's true voice is found in his blade. The boy reaches for his hilt, accepting the challenge without a second thought. He draws his sword and stands ready, telling the senior to come at him. The courtyard goes quiet as both swordsmen focus, neither wanting to give an inch. Jun Am makes the first move, lunging forward with a powerful strike. He swings with everything he's got, but Jun is already moving. The boy's footwork is intricate and fast, catching the senior off guard. Jun begins to move so rapidly he leaves afterimages behind, dancing around every attack. Jun Am is stunned as he recognizes the technique. It's the legendary infinite step. The senior struggles to keep up as Jun pushes him back with a flurry of counters. The initiation ceremony is supposed to overwhelm the newcomer with pressure, but Jun is the one doing the pressuring. Lee Si-ha watches from a distance, nodding that the boy didn't even hesitate to draw his sword. She's impressed that he hasn't been intimidated by the senior's momentum. Other disciples watch in amazement, surprised that the new kid is actually trading blows with someone as skilled as Jun Am. They realize he isn't falling behind in speed at all, which is unheard of for a newcomer. Gong Jun Am is sweating now, realizing the boy is getting faster and faster with every second that passes. He can't understand how someone with so little internal energy can swing a sword with that much precision. Jun stands his ground, looking completely unfazed as the senior catches his breath. Junam's skepticism turns into curiosity as he wonders just how far this kid's talent can take him. Before the duel can go any further, a hand reaches out and stops the next move. Lee Si-ha steps in and firmly tells them both that's enough for today. She stands between the two swordsmen, putting an end to the initiation. Jun Am sheathes his sword and suggests they try a match with heavy blades next time. He formally introduces himself and says he's looking forward to working with the new prodigy. Jun returns the introduction with a polite bow, showing respect to his new senior. Later that night, the training halls are quiet under the starlight. Word about Jun's performance in the tournament has already spread throughout the entire hall. The other disciples discuss how their youngest member is clearly on another level entirely. Everything seems peaceful as the moon rises over the mountain peaks. But in his private room, Jun is struggling as a violent seizure takes hold of him. His 9 yin-blocked meridians are flaring up, the cold yin qi becoming far more powerful and dangerous than ever before. Jun grits his teeth, realizing the only way to survive the seizure is to use the lightning qi of the heavenly thunder true yang technique. As he struggles to maintain control, someone suddenly enters the room. Hands are placed firmly on his back as a warm, stabilizing energy begins to flood his system. Jun looks back in surprise, relieved to see his new master has come to his aid. Lee Si-ha concentrates deeply, using her own qi to suppress the wild fluctuations in the boy's meridians. Jun breathes a sigh of relief, thanking her for getting him through the close call. He admits he needs to master their hall's core technique as fast as possible to keep his condition under control. Lee Si-ha agrees, knowing his 9 yin-blocked meridians are a ticking time bomb. Jun asks for her help in consuming the 300-year-old Ha-shu Wu he won at the tournament. She pauses for a moment, understanding how risky it is to absorb such a potent elixir all at once. With a confident smile, she tells him to trust her and they begin the process immediately. Jun takes a bite of the powerful root, ready to harness its energy. He knows that while it's not a legendary-grade item, it's perfect for building the internal energy he lacks. He swallows the root, feeling its power immediately start to radiate through his chest. Lee Si-ha positions herself behind him again, determined to help him absorb every drop of energy. Jun begins to circulate his internal energy, according to the complex patterns of the heavenly thunder true yang technique. Lee Si-ha focuses on keeping the elixir's power from scattering, but she's shocked by how precisely Jun is handling it. She realizes the energy is merging perfectly with his technique, almost as if he's been practicing for decades. She watches in awe, feeling as though she's assisting a veteran grandmaster rather than a young disciple. A sudden, powerful surge of light erupts as Jun does the impossible. Lee Si-ha can't believe her eyes. He's absorbed every single bit of the Ha-shu Wu's energy. She's never heard of anyone, let alone a beginner, being able to take in an entire spiritual elixir without wasting anything. Sparks of lightning crackle around Jun's eyes as his aura stabilizes, radiating a newfound strength. She tells him he's ready for the promotion exam already, while Jun humbly credits her for the success. Lee Si-ha tells him to get some rest as she steps out into the night. She walks alone through the quiet bamboo forest, still processing what she just witnessed. She reflects on the unique way Jun circulated his energy, something far more advanced than anything she's seen. The insight she gained from watching him starts to click into place in her own mind. Suddenly, she realizes she can finally break through the bottleneck that's been holding her back for years. She smiles, filled with excitement, knowing it's all thanks to the mysterious boy she just took in. The next day dawns over the Heaven's Sword Hall as the training grounds come alive. The senior disciples are already hard at work, their blades whistling through the air. An instructor explains the Soyan sword art, warning them they won't go on missions until they master its 5th stage. The new disciples struggle with the complex footwork and strikes, looking more than a little lost. One young man tries to follow the forms, but his movements are clunky and slow. He stops in his tracks, his eyes widening as he sees something impossible happening nearby. Jun executes the form perfectly, his blade a blur of precision as he strikes the training post. The other disciples start whispering, convinced that the hall master must have been giving him private lessons in secret. Gong Jun Am narrows his eyes, remembering that he saw Lee Si-ha leaving Jun's quarters just last night. He approaches the boy and asks point-blank if the hall master has been giving him private tutoring. Jun calmly denies it while continuing his practice, moving with a fluid grace that belies his age. He then casually suggests they move straight on to the much more advanced great extension sword technique. The disciples are stunned by Jun's progress. He understood a form he saw for the first time immediately. Even the current hall master wasn't this talented. He's a monster. Gong Jun Am listens to the chatter. His gaze fixed on Jun, he recognizes that Jun's sword intent is already reaching a level of completion that could disrupt the balance of the entire hall. Despite his concerns, Jun Am can't deny the sheer magnitude of the boy's ability. To him, Jun is a talent truly worthy of representing the Heaven's Sword Hall. Nearby, Hyo ill listens as the other disciples resolve to train harder so they aren't completely surpassed by their youngest member. Putting his doubts aside, Gong Jun Am decides to move forward. "Then I shall teach you the great extension sword technique," he announces. Jun Am begins to demonstrate the movements, instructing Jun to watch carefully. Jun bows respectfully, eager for the senior's guidance. Meanwhile, at the heart of the Changchun society, a grand assembly is underway in the main hall. A hall leader reads from a scroll, briefing the council on the rising tensions in Jiangxi province and the suspected involvement of the Iron War camp. The room murmurs with concern as they discuss the need for armed intervention. The red-haired master volunteers to go if the situation demands it. The speaker turns to the final item on the agenda. Namgung Jun, he questions whether the boy should be permitted to venture out into the world. Lee Si-ha sits quietly, her expression unreadable. She knows that while rescuing Jun was necessary, letting him leave the hall is a far more dangerous proposition. Other masters around the table express their skepticism, recalling the boy's crippling 9 yin-blocked meridians. One burly master speaks up loudly, arguing that their only goal was to keep Jun from the Sun-Moon demon cult. He points out the risk of sending him out now that he's learned the heavenly thunder true yang technique, as it would make him a prime target for the cult. Lord Muck, presiding over the meeting, places his hand on his cup and turns his attention toward the Heaven's Sword Hall master. He asks for Lee Si-ha's professional opinion on her new disciple. Lee Si-ha meets his gaze steadily, declaring that she does not believe Namgung Jun is someone who needs to be sheltered or protected. She recalls the conviction Jun showed when they first met, remembering his words about the responsibility one carries when holding a sword. She describes the fire she saw in him even during their initial encounter and his subsequent displays of skill during practice. She argues that they should protect his sense of chivalry and nurture his talent so that he may one day become the society's divine sword. She envisions the boy's future, firmly believing that he deserves the chance to prove himself in the light of the world. Slamming his fist on the table, the sword demon stood with Si-ha, rebuking the council for being so blinded by risks that they failed to recognize the genius sitting right under their noses. The room falls silent as the council members process her passionate defense. One master asks if there has ever been another talent like him. The red-haired master looks down thoughtfully, forced to admit that even among their own ranks, there is no one who compares to Namgung Jun. The sword demon isn't holding back. He points out that they're always whining about a lack of talent, but the second a sharp sword actually appears, they're all too scared to touch it. Another leader admits the kid has a terrifyingly natural gift for martial arts. The top brass of the Changchun society discuss Namgung Jun's future, agreeing he could be their greatest asset if he survives long enough to grow. Lord Muck leans in. He's decided it's time to see what this extraordinary child can really do. He grants Jun provisional permission to enter the world of Jianghu, but with one strict rule: stay far away from anything involving the Sun-Moon demon cult. The rest of the hall masters nod along. It's a fair enough deal. The sword demon just huffs and heads for the door, leaving them to their politics. Li Siha can't hide her smile. Her student is finally getting out into the real world. The scene shifts to the Anhui province docks. Lord Muck's voice explains that for now, this is where Jun will be making his mark. Standing on a cliff overlooking the port, Jun confirms he's ready to investigate the unorthodox Bigong sect. He peers out from under his bamboo hat, thinking he probably would have been faster on his own anyway. Just a bit earlier, Li Siha had pulled him aside to officially assign him his first task. She introduces Hio Il, a cheerful-looking swordsman who will be acting as his partner and escort. Jun offers a polite bow, keeping up the act of the well-behaved junior. He can't help but notice the gourd hanging from Hio Il's belt. He asks flat out if it's full of booze. Hio Il just smiles and admits he only really needs the liquid courage when he's holding a blade. That doesn't exactly instill confidence in Jun. Back at the docks, Hio Il suggests they start their investigation at the local market. But shouting from the water catches their attention. Some thugs are ordering a heavy cage to be hauled up. Men strain against the rope, pulling something heavy from the depths. A man gasps for air as the cage clears the water, coughing violently. The bearded thug leader looks down with a smug grin, asking if he's ready to talk now. The choice is simple: pay back the money or hand over his daughter to settle the debt. The old man begs for more time, crying that no father could ever give up his own child. The thug has zero patience. He orders his men to throw the guy right back into the river. The cage sinks back down while the man screams for his life. A single word stops them in their tracks. Jun stands on the dock, hand on his sword. The thug leader turns around, annoyed that someone is bothering him. He realizes the kid is with the Changchun society, but he's not exactly impressed. He squints at the cloud emblem on Jun's robe. He laughs, mocking Jun for being a low-ranked one-cloud disciple and trying to give orders. The thug starts to mock him for being a lunatic. Jun doesn't even move, he just prepares his strike. 13 thunder lightning swords, third form. Blue electricity crackles around his blade. The sword leaves the scabbard in a flash of light. A massive bolt of lightning strikes the pier, knocking the thugs out before they can even scream. Jun looks down at the smoking bodies. Even after all this time, the trash from the unorthodox factions hasn't changed. Mist hangs heavy over the Anhui docks. It's quiet, almost too quiet. An old man shakes like a leaf, staring at the fresh blood on the wood. He can barely find the words to thank Li Siha as she stands over him. Nearby, the head of a thug lies on the ground, a permanent reminder of what happens when you mess with the wrong people. The rescued man keeps bowing, his voice cracking with gratitude as he scrambles away from the scene while Hio Il and the others watch. Hio Il taps his fingers against his alcohol gourd, watching the aftermath with a relaxed grin. He's impressed. Even from his perspective, it's clear the kid knew exactly what he was doing before he even made a move. Underneath that bamboo hat, Namgung Jun remains completely unfazed. No hesitation, just perfect focus. He moves like a ghost, blurring into motion before the next target can even blink. A quick flash, and another thug is sent flying with a bloody gash across his chest. The boy sheathes his sword with a satisfying click. He's going to have a lot to report after this. Higher up, the sun shines bright over the walls of the Bigong sect. A guard leans on his spear, letting out a long yawn. It's just another boring day of duty for him. Or it was, until he spots someone he definitely wasn't expecting at the front gate. Lightning begins to crackle along a blade, the air humming with sudden energy. A massive surge of blue light tears through the entrance, leaving nothing but dust and blood in its wake. The entire complex is suddenly on high alert as the explosion echoes through the buildings. Inside, the rest of the thugs are still busy drinking and bragging about their latest scams. Their leader just laughs, boasting about how much more they'll make once they hand over the commoners they've kidnapped. The doors don't just open, they explode inward, cutting their celebration short. Namgung Jun steps through the smoke, his eyes cold as he calls them out for feeding on the weak. The thugs scramble to their feet, shouting and demanding to know who the hell he thinks he is. As he draws his sword, they catch a glimpse of the Changchun society's attire. Their faces go pale. "There's only one of him," the leader shouts, ordering everyone to charge at once. Jun just spins his sword, the blue lightning intensifying around him. He swings with everything he's got. A blinding pillar of lightning erupts from the floor, charring the wood and everything else in its path. Thugs are tossed aside like ragdolls, their screams drowned out by the thunder. One of them tries a desperate move, launching daggers from the shadows. They miss by a mile. The boy stands in the center of a fresh crater, looking bored. He just smirks. It's almost insulting how sloppy their technique is. He deflects a flurry of blades with minimal effort, moving with a grace they can't even touch. Bodies drop left and right as he continues his walk through the hall. More guys rush in, yelling insults to mask their obvious fear. They try to swarm him, coming from every possible angle at once. One guy thinks he's got an opening, but his eyes go wide when he realizes he's striking air. Jun flips over them, the blue lightning tracing his path through the air. He lands perfectly on their crossed blades, pinning them down with ease. Then he lets loose, a massive circular wave of energy wiping the entire group out in a single pulse. The survivors are left crawling on the floor, clutching their ruined limbs and screaming in agony. From above, the room looks like a disaster zone. To them, he isn't just a boy anymore, he's a monster. Panic finally sets in. They realize they're outclassed and start shouting for a full retreat. But they don't get far. The Bigong sect leader finally steps out, preparing to deal with the brat himself. Thugs are littering the floor, groaning in pain after the initial clash. Hyo-il doesn't slow down, his blade carving through the next guy in a spray of blood. Another one hits the dirt, completely out for the count. Deep inside the facility, a woman and her child huddle behind bars, tears streaming down their faces as they wait for their fate. Rewinding to just before the raid began, Jun looks over at Hyo-il, telling his senior to use his tracking skills to find and rescue the captured civilians. Hyo-il is a bit worried, wondering if the kid will actually be okay taking on the rest of the sect by himself. But for Jun, there's no debate. The safety of the innocent people comes before everything else. Hyo-il watches him go, thinking about the rumors that the kid joined the hall without even taking a test. He was skeptical at first, but seeing Jun's skill and his drive to help people, he realizes the kid's character is the real deal. While Jun keeps the heat on, Hyo-il slips through the carnage to reach the holding cells. He finds the terrified commoners and gives them a reassuring shout, telling them the Changchun society is finally here. With a warm smile, he starts breaking them out, promising to get them all to safety. Outside, the sect members can't believe their eyes. Their leader is actually being pushed back. The air hums as Jun and the Bigong sect leader trade dozens of strikes in a split second, their blades clashing in a blur of steel. The old man is sweating buckets, his eyes wide with shock at the sheer pressure of Jun's sword chi. To him, it feels like he's fighting a literal demon, or a master who's been training for 50 years instead of a teenager. Jun's presence turns dark and suffocating as he prepares to end this fight right now. Desperate, the sect leader screams at him to surrender, threatening to slaughter every single prisoner if he takes another step. Jun just smirks. He's heard this kind of villain speech 1,000 times before. He tells the old man he's exactly as pathetic as expected, and points out that he's definitely not working alone. The sect leader's face goes pale as he realizes his leverage is gone, and he starts stammering, trying to beg for a chance to talk. Jun isn't interested in talking. He launches himself back into the air for the finishing blow. A precise, lethal strike, sending blood splattering everywhere as the ground beneath the sect leader shatters into pieces. Just when Jun thought the battle was over and the old man was down for the count, the real fight began. Suddenly, a massive shockwave blasts straight toward Jun. Seeing things spiraling out of control, Jun couldn't help but worry if his teammate had finished rescuing the civilians. But for now, he had no choice but to face the new arrival. Jun lowered his sword. Jun switches it up, his hands glowing with blue energy as he prepares the thunderclap palm technique. A thunderous explosion of lightning chi erupts the moment Jun clashes with the mysterious stranger. Jun walks through the dust. An old man slowly approaches. Judging by Jun's face, he must be under 20. The old man expresses his shock, stunned that someone so young could deflect his previous attack. His eyes were cold as ice, locked onto the newcomer. He had completely abandoned the thought that he could simply prey on the weak. The old man's face twisted in a snarl, his entire body radiating an overwhelming killing intent as he demanded to know who Jun really was. The old man staggered toward Jun, his face twisted into a mask of pure fury and killing intent. He starts screaming about how Jun has completely ruined his retirement business and everything he built. He glared at the corpse of his puppet leader, cursing him for dying as easily as a dog after all the effort he'd put into building him up. Jun stops for a second, genuinely confused by the phrase retirement business, if that's what he calls human trafficking. He realizes this wasn't just some random small faction. There's definitely someone bigger pulling the strings from the shadows. He looks down at the carnage, his mind already working on who might be behind this operation. He tells the old man he'd actually love to hear more about this business of his. Jun drops into a fresh combat stance, ready to squeeze the truth out of him. The old man, the real sect leader, roared like a wild beast, his hands igniting with dark, eerie flames as he abandoned all sanity for one final attack. He lunges forward, screaming about how Jun is all talk, but he's clearly the one who's terrified. Jun stares down his opponent, his palm glowing with a fierce blue chi as he prepares the heavenly thunder palm technique he studied in the library. He meets the Beigong sect leader's palms strike head-on, triggering a blinding explosion of energy. The force of the strike is immense, sending the old man tumbling backward through the air as the ground shatters beneath them. The sect leader grinds his teeth in frustration, his hands trembling as he curses the brat who's pushing him to his limit. With a crazed look in his eyes, he realizes Jun's chi isn't normal. It's pure and overwhelming, making his own feel tainted in comparison. Desperate to end the battle, the old man's hands ignited with dark orange flames as he roared that he would devour Jun's energy for himself. Jun remains calm, his eyes tracking the man's movements even as the flaming palm comes inches from his face. A massive shockwave erupts as their powers clash, sending debris flying in every direction as the courtyard is torn apart. Through the veil of his bamboo hat, Jun's expression shifts to one of slight surprise as he feels a strange pull on his internal energy. He quickly grabs hold of one of the guards' corpses. He hurls the corpse straight at the old man to disrupt his forbidden technique. Black smoke begins to billow from the body. But instead, the dark energy erupts, instantly incinerating the corpse into ashes. Jun watches coldly as the old man, clearly frustrated, tosses the charred corpse aside. The sect leader undergoes a terrifying transformation, his eyes glowing white as he fully unleashes the heavens-devouring art. Unimpressed, Jun asks if his internal energy is so pitiful that he had to resort to learning such a cheap and hollow demonic cultivation method. The old man screams in rage, his pride wounded far more than his body by the boy's blatant disrespect. They engage again, their movements a blur of steel and fire as the sect leader's greed for Jun's power drives him into a frenzy. He thinks to himself that if he can just absorb a fraction of this kid's solar yang chi, he could finally reach the peak of his cultivation realm. He slams his fists into the stone tiles, shattering them into dust as he yells at the little rat to stop moving and face him. Jun effortlessly leaps onto a nearby roof, looking down at the crazed old man with a mixture of pity and contempt. He questions if the Beigong sect truly sold its soul to the Sun-Moon demon cult, just to gain access to such a flawed technique. The sect leader doesn't even try to hide it anymore, leaping after Jun while shouting that he'll do anything for power. His face is a mask of pure insanity as he reaches out, his eyes fixed on the energy he so desperately craves. Jun sighs, deciding he's heard everything he needs to know about their connection to the cult. He lands a devastating palm strike on the old man's shoulder, shattering his shoulder bone instantly. The sect leader is hammered back down to the earth, his body crashing into the ground with bone-breaking force. Not letting up, Jun drops from the sky like a meteor, delivering a final, crushing blow to end the fight. A choked gasp escapes the old man's throat as the last of his strength leaves him, his vision fading to black. The impact creates a massive crater in the center of the courtyard, sending a plume of dust high into the air. Lying broken and bloodied in the rubble, the sect leader finally finds his voice, weakly begging for Jun to spare his life. Jun ends the fight with a lightning-infused punch, a massive bolt of thunder crashing down onto the old man's head, shattering the earth beneath him. The fight is finally over, leaving the once powerful leader of the Bigong sect as nothing more than a defeated heap on the floor. As the dust settles, Jun notices a small, blood-stained manual that had fallen out of the old man's robes during the struggle. Hyo-il comes running into the courtyard, calling out to the young hero after finishing his task of securing the perimeter. He skids to a halt, his jaw dropping as he takes in the absolute mess Jun left behind. The place looks like a war zone. He leans over the body, recognizing the man as Old Man Sangho, a notorious leech who lived off the Sun-Moon demon cult scraps. He's genuinely impressed that Jun managed to take down a veteran like Sangho right after dealing with the rest of the sect. Looking at the calm teenager, Hyo-il can't help but wonder who this rookie really is to possess such monstrous strength. Jun ignores the praise and simply hands over the small book he found, telling his senior it was hidden in the man's robes. Hyo-il flips through the pages, his expression turning serious as he realizes it's actually a detailed ledger of the sect's illegal dealings. Hyo-il stares at the ledger, his mind racing as he wonders if this discovery is the key to uncovering a much larger conspiracy. One of the rescued children approaches him, tearfully asking for help finding his sister, though Hyo-il still finds the time to jokingly correct the kid to call him Big Brother instead of Mr. A woman freed from the dungeon tells Jun that the cultists had already moved some of the children to another location before he arrived, begging him to save them too. A small hand grips Jun's robe tightly, a desperate pleas escaping the young boy's lips. The boy from before is in tears, begging Jun to find his sister and the others who were taken away. Hyo-il examines the ledger, realizing it's a record of the children sold to the Sun-Moon demon cult, and Jun immediately insists they pursue them. To Jun's surprise, Hyo-il stops him, declaring that his mission officially ends here. Jun is taken aback, questioning why he should turn back now after finding such a lead. Hyo-il explains that he was given strict orders during a meeting with seniors like Sword Demon Sensing and Lord Muck to keep Jun out of any mission involving the Sun-Moon demon cult. He repeats his command for Jun to return, his tone leaving no room for argument as he turns away. Jun clenches his fist, the mention of the cult triggering a deep, frustrated resolve within him. He glares at the ground, feeling the weight of the restrictions placed upon him because of his rookie status. Hyo-il keeps walking, emphasizing that the cult is far too dangerous for someone of Jun's experience level. Jun remains silent for a beat, his frustration simmering just below the surface. He finally speaks up, asking if Hyo-il truly believes he is just a common rookie after seeing his skill in the recent battle. Hyo-il pauses, his voice dropping as he warns Jun that he wasn't making a suggestion, but giving a direct order. Jun continues to follow him, arguing that a true martial artist shouldn't turn a blind eye to what's right just because of their rank or the circumstances. His face is full of fierce determination, as he asks how he could possibly sheath his sword after he's already drawn it for justice. Hyo-il's expression softens slightly as he looks at the boy, finding his junior's stubborn sense of duty quite amusing. Finally relenting, Hyo-il agrees to let Jun come along as long as they call for reinforcements, and Jun quickly asks if they still have time to track them. Confident in his abilities, Heo-il boasts that he is known as the sure-finding sword because he never loses his target's trail. The two martial artists take off into the forest, their speed carrying them quickly away from the docks and into the wilderness. Jun struggles to keep up with the pace, realizing that the high-level tracking Heo-il is performing is something he can't replicate with his current skills. He is impressed by the lack of hesitation in Heo-il's movements, as the senior seems to know exactly where the cultists went. Heo-il leads them through the brush, his eyes scanning the environment for the tiniest signs of passage. He suddenly halts, pointing toward fresh footprints on the path and indicating that their enemies are close at hand. Deep tracks are carved into the dry earth, a clear sign of the radiant demon step used by the Sun-Moon cult. Heo-il leaps through the forest canopy with practiced ease, certain they'll catch up soon. Even at this breakneck pace, his tracking skills are on a completely different level. He doesn't miss the slightest trace left behind on the forest floor. Namgung Jun watches him, realizing this isn't the kind of mastery someone of their age should have. As they blur through the trees, Jun finally understands why the senior originally tried to send him back. The senior's tracking abilities and movement techniques are truly top-tier. They move with effortless grace, gliding across the treetops. Jun is bent over, gasping for air. His stamina is still nowhere near where it needs to be. Heo-il signals for silence. They've finally found their targets. Down on the road, two heavy carriages are making a break for the Yangtze River. If they reach the docks and board a ship, it'll be impossible to track them. They have zero time to waste. Looking at the ground, Jun realizes Heo-il was actually slowing down just to let him keep up. He tells the senior to go ahead and stop them while he catches up as fast as he can. Heo-il gives him a firm pat on the shoulder, telling him to save his strength for the real fight. With a sudden burst of speed, the senior disappears. Left alone, Jun grits his teeth, more determined than ever to master his cultivation. Down below, the guards are getting bored, wondering when they'll finally reach the water. Heo-il watches from a branch, perfectly hidden as a guard casually offers a drink to his companion. He pulls out a handful of needles. He just needs to stall them until Jun arrives. The needles fly, taking a guard right in the throat. Chaos breaks out instantly, as the guards realize they're under attack and scramble to protect the carriages. Heo-il continues the assault from the shadows, his needles raining down like deadly hail. Another guard is silenced before he can even scream. The lead guard deflects the hidden weapons, growing frustrated that the enemy won't show their face. But then, a smug grin spreads across his face as he realizes something. He realizes there's only one attacker and orders his men to ignore the distraction and keep the cargo moving. Seeing his plan fail, Heo-il realizes they caught onto his bluff way too fast. He has no other choice but to engage directly, drawing his blade. He drops from the sky, cutting down the lead horse in a single, fluid strike. The animal collapses, and the entire carriage flips over in a violent crash. Inside the dark carriage, the Namgung siblings are absolutely terrified, crying out for someone to save them. Outside, Heo-il grits his teeth, knowing the children are trapped in the crossfire. A massive impact slams down on the roof, shattering the wooden carriage in a single blow. Heo-il barely manages to leap back, heart racing as he faces the unknown attacker. Before he can even catch his breath, a heavy kick comes flying at him with incredible force. The shockwave from the strike tears through the air, sending dust and debris everywhere. Heo-il realizes just how close he came to dying. If that kick had landed, it would have been over instantly. He watches the enemy's feet closely, noting the insane speed of his martial arts. The Myeonjao officer steps forward with a smug grin, mocking Heo for his obvious fear. But Heo-il isn't backing down. He just reaches for the alcohol gourd at his waist. In the middle of a life-or-death battle, he starts chugging his drink like there's no tomorrow. The officer with the scarred face looks on in disbelief, wondering why this guy is getting drunk now. Heo-il wipes his mouth and tells him there's only one person he's actually afraid of, and it's not this cultist. He launches forward, his blade flashing in the sunlight as he goes on the offensive. The officer's expression shifts to shock as he realizes his opponent's speed has suddenly spiked. Heo-il's eyes are cold and focused. His entire fighting style has shifted into something far more dangerous. A massive explosion of light erupts as their energies collide in the middle of the woods. The sounds of clashing steel and heavy impacts echo through the dense forest. It's a blur of motion as Heo-il weaves through a flurry of lethal kicks. The officer stomps the ground, his raw power cracking the earth beneath his feet. A kick finally catches Heo-il in the chest, forcing a pained grunt out of him as he's pushed back. The officer doesn't give him a second to recover, staying right on his heels with a relentless assault. Heo-il can feel himself losing ground, realizing he's up against a high-level demon cultist. These fanatics are trained in the most brutal arts of the Sun-Moon demon cult from the moment they join. And an executive who masters these arts reaches the peak realm, earning the rank of an officer. They move through the trees like ghosts, their power far exceeding a normal martial artist. The officer laughs as Heo-il scrambles to avoid another strike, calling him a rat for scurrying away. He pins Heo-il's blade down with his foot, telling him he's way out of his league. Heo-il grips his sword tighter, his knuckles turning white as he tries to find a way out. His main concern isn't himself, it's keeping this monster away from young Namgung. Suddenly, the officer leaves an opening, stumbling slightly in his arrogance. This is the moment Heo-il was waiting for. He has to make this strike count. He pours his energy into a desperate swing, his blade glowing with a sharp blue aura. But the officer reacts instantly, blocking the sword with his bare hand and a mocking smile. He lets out a chilling laugh, disappointed that the struggle was so short-lived. Before Heo-il can even process the failure, a brutal feint sets him up for a crushing blow. A fist slams into his face, sending his vision spinning as his headband flies off. He tries to raise his arms to block, but the raw power behind the follow-up strike is overwhelming. As he tastes copper, he realizes his internal energy just isn't enough to bridge the gap between their realms. The force of the final blow sends him crashing through the air like a broken doll. The children scream in horror as they watch their protector fall, begging him not to die. The officer stands over his broken body, sneering at how pathetic and embarrassing the fight turned out to be. The Myeonjaeo officer sneers, nodding that the Changchun society always seems to have their noses in everyone's business. He looks down at Heo-il, promising that he won't let the man have the mercy of a quick death. Heo-il is sprawled out on the ground, completely at the cultist's mercy as he stares up at his impending doom. Just then, the officer's head snaps to the side, sensing a presence he didn't notice before. A pair of calm, steady footsteps approach from the shadows of the forest road. Namgung-jun appears, forcefully slamming one of the black-robed underlings to the ground, his expression emotionless and his aura radiating a chilling authority. The officer's eyes widen in confusion. He can't believe a mere child is standing before him so boldly. Jun stops just a few paces away, looking down at the injured senior on the ground. Without a hint of fear, he calmly asks Senior Heo for permission to take over the fight. Heo-il is overcome with a sudden, overwhelming sense of relief that the boy is here. He realizes then that Namgung-jun is far from being just some inexperienced rookie. The officer laughs, asking if Jun really thinks he's some kind of hero swooping in for a rescue. He looks Jun up and down, mocking him for not even having reached adulthood yet. Suddenly, a sharp blue sword aura begins to pour from Jun's entire body, chilling the air. The officer's mock laughter dies in his throat as he feels the sheer intensity of that energy. He tries to hide his growing unease behind more insults, calling Jun a one-cloud brat who's in over his head. Jun doesn't say a word, his focus absolute as the surrounding forest seems to hold its breath. The officer launches a high, powerful kick, determined to crush the boy in a single blow. Jun sidesteps the strike with surgical precision, the earth shattering where his opponent's foot lands. Internally, Jun analyzes the situation, knowing his raw cultivation realm is a clear disadvantage. Chinese letter. A metallic clang echoes throughout the entire forest. Jun's blade strikes the officer's leg, but it's like hacking into solid rock. He is stunned to encounter such a high-level master here, witnessing the man's internal energy surging uncontrollably from his very limbs. But Jun knows that martial arts are about more than just brute strength and energy levels. The officer scoffs at the boy's one-cloud realm, thinking the gap between them is insurmountable. He demands to know what a kid like him could possibly do against a master of the cult. But just as he took a few steps, he froze as if struck by an electric shock in his legs. He could no longer channel his internal energy to attack. The officer's eyes widened in horror. His mobility had been completely crippled. Meanwhile, Jun has already braced himself, ready to unleash his next strike. Jun understood full well that sword chi and palm force were merely different expressions of the same martial truth. He weaves through a desperate flurry of kicks and punches, his movements as fluid as water. The officer screams in frustration, unable to land even a glancing blow on the child. He calls Jun persistent, his arrogance finally giving way to a frantic, primal survival instinct. Jun prepares his ultimate counter, knowing he only has one chance to end this cleanly. The officer roars for him to disappear, launching a final, heavy-handed strike. Jun's eyes grow cold as he grips his blade, declaring that as long as he has a sword, he won't fall. Blue lightning erupts as he executes the 13 Thunder Lightning Swords, 10th stance, 10 tears. The officer stands frozen for a moment as Jun passes by him like a silent ghost. He coughs up a fountain of blood, still unable to comprehend how a child could possess such lethal skill. As the cultist collapses, his final thought is of the sheer impossibility of what just happened. Jun sheaths his blade and heads over to assist Hyo-il, acknowledging the man's hard work. Hyo-il looks at him with newfound awe, even as he winces from the pain of his broken ribs. Jun ignores the praise, focusing instead on the severity of the senior's injuries as they begin their trek back. Namgung Jun gazes at the forest road, feeling a pang of guilt that Senior Hyo was injured because of his own perceived shortcomings. Hyo-il lets out a boisterous laugh, adjusting his hat and telling the boy not to worry about such trivial things. As they walk back with the survivors, Hyo-il tells Jun that he learned a lot from watching him during this first mission. With the children safe and the cult's ledger secured, the mission is an undeniable success. Hyo-il smiles, realizing that calling the mission merely successful is a massive understatement. In his mind, he replays the moments where Jun's incredible power was unleashed. The boy single-handedly dismantled the Bigong sect and took down a deadly Myeonjao officer. More than his strength, Hyo-il is moved by the genuine kindness Jun shows toward the common people he rescued. Chinese letter. He recalls the sheer terror in the enemy's eyes when faced with Jun's common-sense-defying swordsmanship. Hyo-il realizes that a talent as immense as Jun's can't be contained within a simple fortress forever. He resolves to put his best effort into the formal report, making sure the higher-ups know exactly what Jun is capable of. The pair walks through the mist, their mission finally drawing to a close. At the gates of the society, Hyo-il tells Jun to go rest while he heads to the Mukhyang department to report. The sprawling, grand architecture of the Changchun society stands firm against the swirling clouds. Suddenly, a deep voice calls out Namgung Jun's name, catching the boy off guard. Jun turns to see an imposing figure approaching, his heart hammering against the weight of an overwhelming presence. A massive man with a black topknot and an orange vest over gray robes introduces himself as Kang Gok, the master of the Jangpa Hall. Jun recognizes the name of the hall, a place known for warriors of peerless strength. Maintaining his composure, the young disciple offers a deep, respectful greeting to the legendary hall master. The Jangpa Hall is famous for its destructive power, a force that can shatter any enemy formation. In any large-scale conflict, the warriors of Jangpa Hall are always at the forefront, leading the charge. They are a whirlwind of violence on the battlefield, leaving only dust and defeat in their wake. Kang Gok himself is said to be a supreme master, a man whose physical might is nearly unmatched. He carries a massive, double-headed battle axe that drips with the metaphorical blood of his countless victories. Kang Gok steps forward, his eyes narrowing as he brings up Jun's encounter with the Sun-Moon demon cult. Jun feels the physical weight of the man's aura, a crushing pressure that tests his very spirit. Kang Gok's voice is low and menacing as he asks if Jun knows that the cult specifically hunts men born with the 9 yin-blocked meridians. Jun clenches his teeth, knowing the man is deliberately trying to break his will. He acknowledges the question, his mind flashing to the dark symbols of the cult. The Sun Moon Demon cult is infamous for their horrific demonic arts and sacrificial rituals. In his past life, Jun saw them use these rituals to create empty, twisted vessels that were neither male nor female. He understands that his unique body is the ultimate prize for their dark ambitions. His constitution allows him to process both yin and yang energies, making him a perfect, albeit unwilling, candidate. Kang Gok asks if it wouldn't be wiser for Jun to simply hide within the safety of the society. Jun stands his ground, stating that running away would be the easy path, but not the right one. He believes his new life should be dedicated to walking the path of chivalry through the martial way. Kang Gok's face contorts in anger, demanding to know if a child with a little talent thinks he can stand above the world. Chinese letter. Jun remembers the shadows of the disciples he lost in his past, a burden that keeps him from ever being arrogant. He looks Kang Gok in the eye, declaring that his sword is righteous and will remain so until the end. Kang Gok searches the boy's face, wondering if this is just youthful hubris or a genuine, ironclad resolve. He warns Jun that the cult will hunt him relentlessly until the day he dies. Suddenly, Kang Gok grips his massive axe, declaring that he will test Jun's martial arts right here and right now. Kang Gok leaps high into the sky, his silhouette blocking the sun as he bellows for Namgung Jun to draw his blade and defend himself. The sound of steel on steel rings out through the courtyard as Jun catches the descending axe with his own blade in a shower of sparks. Kang Gok's eyes narrow in surprise as he realizes the boy isn't just surviving the strike, but holding his ground. Jun's gaze is cold and absolute, his every sense heightened and focused entirely on the massive warrior before him. The Hall Master is stunned that a mere child could read his complex forms so perfectly, remaining unshaken by his overwhelming presence. Determined to see the boy's true depth, Kang Gok lets out a grunt and swings his axe again, pushing even more power into the blow. Jun dances through the lethal arc of the axe, his movements a blur of grace as he continues to parry and redirect the heavy strikes. Realizing the child is far more skilled than he anticipated, Kang Gok gathers his energy for a strike that would level an ordinary man. Jun feels the atmospheric pressure shift, knowing that his sword will shatter if he tries to block this next attack directly. He reaches deep into the memories of his past life, deciding to recreate the legendary Great Wind sword art to survive. His body begins to move with a deceptive, whirling momentum, channeling the raw force of the environment. Utilizing the profound principles of silk-reeling energy, he turns his sword into a vortex that captures and reflects Kang Gok's power. The two weapons collide with the force of a thunderclap, sending a massive geyser of energy erupting into the air. The impact is so violent that the nearby roofs begin to shake, tiles rattling under the intense sonic boom. Even the heavy stone structures around the society entrance groan and tremble from the aftershock of the clash. Jun grinds his teeth as he is pushed back, his smaller frame struggling against the sheer physical weight of a peak realm master. He is momentarily awestruck by the terrifying depth of Kang Gok's internal energy, which feels like an immovable tide. Refusing to yield, Jun lets out a fierce shout and pushes back with every ounce of will and spiritual energy he can muster. He plunged his sword into the ground to regain his balance. Stone and dust are thrown high into the air as the shockwave carves deep gouges into the courtyard pavement. As the dust settled, a long gash carved by Jun's sword was revealed, bearing witness to his grueling struggle to hold his ground. Jun stands panting, his breath coming in ragged gasps, but he remains upright and defiant. Kang Gok stares at the boy in stunned silence, his mind unable to comprehend the sheer skill he just witnessed. He looked down at the long skid marks left by his boots, stunned to realize that he, too, had been forced into retreat. A man is lowered into the depths in a cage, a grim reminder of the darkness Jun is fighting to erase. He sees the faces of the innocent, fueling his resolve to uphold what's right, no matter the cost. Jun catches his breath, having poured every ounce of his spirit into that final clash. Kang-gok grips his weapon, nodding that most people drop their convictions the moment things get difficult. But Jun isn't standing alone. He has the strength of the Changchun society at his back. The Hall Master's stern expression finally breaks into a smirk. He admits that for someone so young, Jun has already found a martial path worth respecting. With his talent officially acknowledged, Jun stands tall, ready for whatever the heavens throw at him next. Kang-gok slowly restrained his aura, his orange robes fluttering in the wind, his sharp eyes never leaving the young man. Namgung Jun stands firm, his internal energy flaring out like a ring of fire around his body. The kid's control is terrifying for his age, having already reached the peak of the first-rate realm. The Hall Master can't help but be impressed, realizing it would be a joke to criticize a talent this polished. He flicks a small wooden box through the air toward the boy. Jun snatches it out of the sky with ease, looking a bit confused. Kang-gok claims it's an elixir to help with internal injuries from their last clash, though he's clearly just being generous. The young servant watches him walk away, knowing full well he didn't actually take any damage. He realizes the old man just needed a face-saving excuse to hand over such a valuable gift. Jun bows low in respect, shouting his thanks as the master leaves the grounds. In a quiet office, clan leader Lord Muck goes through the latest reports while sipping his tea. Heo-il stands nearby, arguing that keeping a genius like this hidden any longer is a complete waste of potential. The silver-haired instructor isn't usually one to exaggerate, and he's fully backing the boy's progress. The old man strokes his beard, finding that everything is playing out exactly as he envisioned. Lord Muck is clearly pleased that the brat lived up to every bit of the hype. News of the feat travels fast, spreading through every corner of the clan's training halls. The disciples can't stop whispering about the servant who's suddenly outclassing everyone. Rumors say he's already reached the very top of the first-rate realm, which is unheard of for someone his age. Gong Jun AM sits on the steps, brooding over the fact that this newcomer's sword energy is already on another level. He recalls the sheer disbelief of watching those strikes. It hasn't even been a month since the kid first picked up a blade. The senior disciple finally snaps, telling the others to quit their yapping and get back to training. As the sun begins to set over the estate, the intense atmosphere doesn't fade. Inside his room, Jun exhales slowly, finishing another grueling session of energy cultivation. He clenches his chest as the familiar, sharp pain of his blocked meridians flares up again. Despite his progress, the physical strain on his frail body is becoming almost unbearable. He remembers his past life, when a massive, muscular frame made this kind of training look like child's play. This current body is just too weak. Without a proper external martial arts method, he's going to hit a wall. A calm voice from the hallway interrupts his thoughts, asking for permission to enter. Li Siha walks in, carrying a stack of heavy manuals tucked under her arm. The boy immediately drops to a bow, thanking his master for keeping watch while he meditated. She offers a small, knowing smile, brushing off the gratitude like it's nothing. Jun's curiosity gets the better of him as he eyes the old books she's holding. These are various body tempering techniques she pulled from the archives specifically for him. Beside the martial arts, she even included medical texts focused on meridians and anatomy. He's genuinely surprised by how well she understands the specific struggle he's going through. The woman sets the manuals down, explaining that he needs to master the inner workings of his own body first. She gives him a reassuring thumbs up, promising to teach him everything he needs to know. Jun offers a sincere thank you, feeling a rare moment of genuine support. She taps the hilt of her sword, reminding him that the blade is still the priority. The kid is more than ready, a confident smirk appearing as they prepare to head out. They move to the center of the massive training grounds, surrounded by the silence of the evening clouds. Facing off under the purple sky, the master tells him it's time to show her his 13 lightning flashes sword. Namgung Jun unleashes his 13 lightning flashes sword, a technique he developed himself in his past life. The boy lunges, hopping that clashing with a master like her will reveal the deeper secrets of the blade. Their weapons collide with a sharp metallic ring. Li Siha moves with effortless grace, her blade drawing wide, elegant arcs that effortlessly guide his strikes away. The Hall Lord remains perfectly calm, her eyes tracking every one of his frantic movements. Despite the speed of his lightning-fast strikes, she completely shuts down his offensive with what looks like slow, deliberate motion. She flows through the training ground like water, taking total control of the space between them. A small, confident smile plays on her lips as she holds her position. From a distance, their figures blur as the apprentice tries to find even a single opening in her defense. Jun refuses to back down, pressing forward with another series of lunges. The woman spins gracefully, her movements so fluid they seem to defy gravity. She counters with a burst of speed that leaves a trail of blue energy in her wake. Standing his ground, the young apprentice crackles with internal energy as he readies his next move. He wonders if the legendary heavenly lightning true yang art is what makes her defensive style so impenetrable. Their blades meet again, and he realizes she's using the principle of the blunt sword to control the flow of the battle. He's forced to adapt as she seamlessly links her strikes together using the principle of the flexible sword. With nothing more than a subtle flick of her wrist, she redirects the full force of his momentum. Lee Si-ha effectively cuts off every potential path his blade could take. The kid can't help but be impressed. This is exactly the level of mastery he'd expect from a hall lord. He lowers his sword and bows deeply, offering his sincere thanks for the lesson. Curious, Jun asks for the official name of that defensive technique. She looks out over the sunset-drenched grounds and calls it the phantom cloud folding wall. Usually, a technique of this caliber would require years of study in the clan's massive martial arts archives. It's officially classified as a fourth-stage art, meant for those who have already mastered the fundamentals. The boy clenches his fist, his determination flaring as he vows to make this technique his own. He tells himself that he will definitely master it, no matter how much effort it takes. With a bold look in his eyes, he asks if he can try using it right this second. The disciples watching from the sidelines are stunned, never imagining they'd get to see the youngest recruit spar so seriously. They realize that just witnessing this exchange between the two of them is a rare learning opportunity. Jun adjusts his grip, his hands steady as he visualizes the movements he just saw. He drops into the opening stance of the phantom cloud folding wall with surprising precision. Lee Si-ha is internally shocked. Is he really trying to copy a high-level art after seeing it just once? The kid lunges forward, putting his theory into practice with a decisive strike. A brilliant burst of white light erupts as he successfully channels the essence of the technique. His master watches closely, realizing he hasn't just mimicked the form, but actually captured the core principle of the flexible sword. She meets his attack, her own movements reflecting the same fluid power. A massive shockwave ripples through the air as their powers collide once more. Jun plants his foot firmly on the stone floor, absorbing the impact. Through nothing but his own genius, he manages to keep pace with her shifting rhythms. The boy focuses his intent, his gaze sharpening as the intensity of the spar reaches a fever pitch. He blurs into motion, his speed catching even the onlookers off guard. The woman flips through the air with acrobatic ease, her long hair trailing behind her as she effortlessly evades his lunge. Namgung Jun pours everything into his strikes, the lightning energy from his blade illuminating the dimming sky. The boy finds himself locked in a fierce exchange, meeting his master's gaze with newfound determination. Their blades sing as they collide, echoing across the silent grounds of the blue cloud hall. Despite the strain on his muscles, he wears a wide, ecstatic grin, relishing the challenge. He pushes forward again, his movements becoming more fluid as he adapts to the flow of the battle. Lee Si-ha watches him with a mixture of surprise and pride, her calm expression never wavering. The hall lord effortlessly parries his barrage of attacks, her movements as graceful as drifting smoke. She meets his blade head-on, the impact sending sparks flying into the air. The watching disciples can hardly believe their eyes as they witness the youngest recruit trading blows with a master. One of the onlookers notes that even though she is clearly holding back, the boy's prowess is truly monstrous. Jun gasps for air, his lungs burning from the sheer intensity of the exchange. His legs begin to tremble under the weight of his own power, a grim reminder of his body's current limitations. He refuses to let his guard down, his hands clenching the hilt of his sword with white-knuckled intensity. Si-ha finally calls an end to the session, complimenting him on a fine spar that he should remember well. The woman turns back toward him, her long hair billowing in the evening breeze. Bowing respectfully, the servant asks if she would also demonstrate her legendary fast sword technique. He knows that mastering the blunt and flexible sword principles isn't enough. He needs to understand speed as well. She pauses, considering his request, as she walks slowly toward him across the stone tile. Lee Si-ha remains silent for a moment, perhaps gauging if he can truly handle the next level of her martial arts. The hall lord eventually relents, stating that as her disciple, it's only natural for him to experience this art firsthand. Her eyes narrow, focusing with a sharpness that makes the very air around them feel heavy. Before Jun can even blink, She vanishes into a blur of motion, launching her assault. He barely manages to raise his sword in time, as a flurry of lightning-fast strikes rains down on him. The speed is on an entirely different level than before, leaving him struggling just to stay on his feet. The kid grits his teeth, his vision blurring as he tries to track her impossible movements. His hands feel like they're about to explode from the sheer force of the vibrations traveling up his arms. Siha explains that this heavenly lightning true Yang sword art is what she would have taught him first if he hadn't created his own. She unleashes a final, devastating strike that radiates with a blinding azure light. The surrounding disciples are forced to shield their eyes as a shockwave sweeps through the training area. As the dust settles, a wide crater is revealed in the center of the arena, a testament to her immense power. Namgung-jun collapses onto one knee, his breath coming in ragged gasps as the adrenaline begins to fade. His master looks down at him with a satisfied smile, nodding that his own 13 lightning flashes sword will only evolve from here. The boy stares at his own hands, realizing that with a mentor like her, he can surpass his past life's peak much faster. He offers another deep bow of gratitude, acknowledging the invaluable lesson he just received. The sunset paints the sky in shades of deep purple and orange, as the training session finally draws to a close. Resting on the steps, the young man realizes that basic external training won't be enough to overcome his physical limits. Gong Jun Am approaches him, calling out his name with a friendly but concerned tone. The senior disciple checks on his condition, acknowledging his incredible progress but nodding his urgent need for a breakthrough. He notices how the boy's hands are still shaking, a clear sign of physical exhaustion. Jun Am suggests that if he wants to truly strengthen his foundation, he should consider visiting the Iron Tower Hall. Jun looks up, curious about what kind of place could offer the intense training he needs. His senior just smiles enigmatically, telling him that he'll understand everything once he sees the place for himself. Gong Jun Am explains that the Iron Tower Hall is where the biggest muscle fanatics in their faction gather. He advises the boy to seek out the Lord of the Iron Tower Hall if he truly wants to improve his external training. Namgung-jun soon arrives at the impressive complex of buildings that house the legendary training facility. As he enters, the air is thick with the sounds of exertion as massive men push their physical limits with heavy weights. The young man notes the intense focus on individual physical conditioning rather than standard group drills. He recalls that this place is one of the 3 strongest halls among the 10 within the sword fragrance department. Even among that elite group, the Iron Tower Hall is renowned for possessing the absolute finest external martial arts. A sudden booming voice calls out his name, causing him to come to a sudden halt. Dan Yongxi stands before him, a mountain of a man with a thick mustache and a boisterous, friendly grin. Taken aback by the warm greeting, the boy asks if the master truly knows who he is. The hall lord lets out a thunderous laugh, stating that it's impossible not to know the name spreading through the faction. Nearby disciples stop their training, whispering in surprise at the arrival of the recruit who famously took down a cult officer. The muscular giant points a finger toward him, his presence filling the entire courtyard. He challenges the guest to see if he can correctly identify his host. Offering a respectful bow, Namgung-jun greets the Lord of the Iron Tower Hall, recognizing him immediately. He remembers this man from the tournament finals, where he served as an imposing and fair referee. Dan Yongxi asks if the prize he won, the rare Hasuo root elixir, proved to be a remarkable aid. The master suddenly reaches out and grips the boy's arm, his expression shifting to one of deep concern. He studies the young man's physical form up close, noticing that his body is in even worse condition than he suspected. It seems impossible to him that someone with such a small, underdeveloped frame could execute high-level sword techniques. When asked about his business, Jun explains that he has come seeking expert advice on external martial arts training. Dan Yongxi ponders the request, asking if the boy took a good look at the hall members on his way in. The boy smiles, admitting that he can clearly see why this hall is known for having the finest external arts among the strongest. Dan Yongxi says he saw Jun's skills during the exam, so this shouldn't take long. He figures the kid has had an easy ride, so far thanks to his talent, but he warns that external training is a whole different beast that talent alone won't solve. He looms over Jun, explaining that this path only yields to endless sweat and grit. Right on cue, a couple of guys run off screaming about how sadistic the training is. Dan stops and looks back, asking if the kid really thinks he can hack it. The hall master stands there like a mountain, clearly skeptical. Jun knows there aren't any shortcuts to getting stronger. He clenches his fist, determined to see this through to the end. He doesn't say a word, he just drops his outer robe. Dan flexes his massive back, and tells him they're about to see what he's made of. He grabs Jun by the shoulder to get a feel for his frame. Jun stands there looking incredibly lean, almost fragile compared to the monsters in this hall. Dan is actually stunned. He can't believe someone this skinny produced that much power in the tournament. He realizes he absolutely has to pass his methods on to this kid. Jun asks if he's really going to teach him his exclusive martial art. Dan just flexes his massive chest and arms, letting the results speak for themselves. He explains that the human body is more complex than words can describe. He demonstrates how easily things can go wrong with a simple surge of power. And just like that, one of the disciples collapses in a heap of pain. The other instructors are sweating just watching. Most people can't handle the advanced stages. Dan turns his attention back to Jun, ready to start the real test. He steps in with a heavy rock step that practically shatters the floor. Then comes the mid-heaven iron fist. The punch is absolutely massive, wreathed in heat and energy. It's his rock-shattering pierce, a blow designed to break through anything. Jun sees the fist closing in and knows that a direct block will snap his sword in half. He draws his blade in a blur, trying to find a way to deflect the force. The impact is thunderous, throwing up a cloud of sparks as steel meets bone. Jun's arms are shaking from the weight. It feels less like a punch and more like he's being hit by a giant iron mace. Dan Yongsi smirks, finally seeing the phantom cloud folding wall in action. The hall master is practically buzzing with excitement as he powers up his aura. Namgung Jun can barely catch a breath as the giant keeps the pressure dialed to the max. He stays mobile, dodging another series of heavy, bone-breaking swings. The kid flips through the air with insane agility to avoid getting crushed by the onslaught. He lands in a crouch, knowing his sword would have snapped by now without his special technique. Jun locks in, knowing he can't leave even the smallest opening if he wants to survive. He launches a counterattack, his blade glowing as he closes the distance in a blur. The watching disciples are stunned to see a newcomer keeping up like this. Dan's muscles are like iron, his defense just as impressive as his offense. He flexes with a grin, wondering if the boy has mastered some kind of body protection art. Jun struggles against the sheer force, feeling like he's hitting a solid mountain. The master spins around for another go, taunting the boy to see what else he's got. Jun doesn't back down for a second, resetting his stance for another round. He's drenched in sweat, realizing they're only just getting started. The spar continues as the sun begins to set over the massive training courtyard. Again, echoes through the air as the two clash over and over again. The senior disciples can't believe they've already gone through 50 exchanges. The kid is still hanging in there, proving he's anything but ordinary. His mental fortitude is off the charts, surpassing anyone else in the hall. Dan decides it's time to wrap things up and gets completely serious. He readies his mid-heaven iron fist, the ground literally cracking under his weight. He punches the earth with massive force, sending debris flying everywhere. Then comes the relentless barrage of fists, the crashing wave shatter. Jun is caught in the middle of it, doing everything he can just to stay alive. The crowd thinks he's finally reached his physical limit. The boy is gasping for air, knowing a direct hit from this would be game over. He narrows his eyes, focusing every bit of energy he has left in his body. He grits his teeth, refusing to let himself go down yet. His eyes glow with a new intensity as he pushes past his total fatigue. He weaves through the punches, moving like a blur to find an opening. One final, massive clash sends a shockwave through the entire area. As the dust settles, both fighters stand frozen in the center of the courtyard. A few fresh drops of blood hit the stone floor. Jun stands his ground, gasping for air while leaning heavily on his sword. Dan looks down at his hand in total shock. The kid actually managed to scratch him. He's blown away by the combination of raw talent and pure determination. He calls an end to the fight, telling Jun it's finally time to take a rest. The boy's legs are shaking like crazy from the sheer physical exhaustion. His hands are trembling so much he can barely hold his weapon, but he won't drop it. Despite the pain, he stays focused, refusing to show even a hint of collapse. Dan is fully convinced now. He absolutely has to train this monster himself. Jun is gasping for air, feeling his heart race in a way it hasn't in years. The training that follows under Dan Yongsi is nothing but absolute brutality. The hall master screams for the boy to get back up, demanding just one more rep. Dan pushes his mind and body to their absolute limits during every session. The rest of the Iron Tower Hall gets swept up in the intensity, making their own workouts even harsher. Jun is on the verge of collapse, but he grits his teeth for one last lift. He finally locks the bar out, a small victory in a day full of pain. Dan just laughs and tells him to do it 3 more times. The kid looks totally betrayed, but the master says if he has breath to complain, he has breath to work. The big man introduces a custom bar designed to get heavier as plates are added. It's meant to push a person's limits further than a simple horse stance ever could. For now, he tells the kid to start with just the empty bar. Then he asks if the boy is ready to see the next piece of equipment. Jun is already struggling with the weight, looking terrified of what's coming next. Dan effortlessly holds up a massive dumbbell like it's a toy. He chuckles, wondering how the kid expects to survive if he's already flagging. Jun refuses to give in, claiming he can handle the weight despite how heavy it feels. A senior disciple watches, reminding him that just moving isn't enough to see real results. The master shows off his own back, explaining that you have to feel exactly where every muscle is working. It's mental training just as much as physical, and Jun has to picture the movement in his mind. Dan has spent years condensing his theories on the human body into these oral teachings. He's even developed specific postures to target every part of a warrior's physique. A full month passes by as Jun undergoes this relentless, close-quarters instruction. The boy's grip on the training bar has finally become firm and steady. When he stands shirtless, the transformation is staggering. He's lean and packed with muscle. The other disciples are blown away that he managed to lift a plated bar after only a month. Jun just wipes the sweat away with a humble smile. They admit they expected him to quit, and some even wish he'd joined their hall permanently. Dan barks at them to shut their mouths and get back to their own training. He admits that building muscle that fast is impressive, but he's far from done. He reminds Jun that he's a swordsman, not a martial artist who uses his fists. He explains that a swordsman needs a different kind of physique than a fist fighter. Understanding the core principles of how a swordsman uses muscle is what really matters. Jun takes the lesson to heart, focused on mastering these new fundamentals. A few days later, the entire hall gathers for a massive group exercise. Dan stands atop a high tower, ordering everyone to run 30 laps before hitting the obstacle course. He forbids them from using internal energy. This test is for physical strength only. The disciples whisper among themselves, wondering if Jun can possibly finish a course this hard. A senior disciple tells him it's okay to fail, urging him not to push his body too far. The test begins with a grueling run, and Dan shouts from above for everyone to pick up the pace. They move on to pulling heavy loads, with the master yelling for them to use their back muscles. He has no mercy, calling them slow and demanding they run like they actually want to pass. Dan Yongsi walks up to those who have reached their limits, shouting for them to get up and keep moving. He deliberately fires off insults about their stamina to push their fighting spirits even higher. The harsh training environment forges an unbreakable bond of camaraderie among the disciples. They shout encouragement to one another, determined to show what they are made of. By overcoming these hardships together, these warriors learn the true meaning of chivalry. Namgung Jun pulls himself up a rope with every ounce of strength, his body steaming from the effort. Cheered on by his peers, the boy finally reaches the top of the tower. Dan watches with a look of genuine surprise, nodding that even capable men often pass out during this test. The hall master wonders if the boy possesses the mental strength required to break past his physical limits. Jun collapses onto the wooden floor, gasping for breath as the others celebrate their shared victory. A fellow disciple quickly offers him some water to help him recover from the exertion. Suddenly, the senior's face contorts in shock as he sees the boy's alarming condition. Jun begins to seize violently on the floor, his entire body racked with uncontrollable tremors. The group panics as Dan Yongsi watches from a distance, his arms crossed in a contemplative stance. The master realizes with a grim expression that the boy is suffering a 9-yin blocked meridian seizure. As a senior disciple reaches out to help the boy wake up, Dan's voice thunders through the air. He commands the others not to touch him, startling the young man who was about to assist. Dan takes a deep, focused breath, releasing pillars of steam from his nostrils as he prepares to act. With a powerful shout, the big man calls for everyone to stop, his presence overwhelming the area. Jun's eyes fly open, his face drenched in sweat as he wonders if he lost consciousness after the fit. The boy sits up shakily, realizing he must immediately focus on steadying his Danshan breathing. Dan dismisses the other disciples, telling them he will personally watch over the recovering boy. The master sits cross-legged, observing the aftermath of the seizure and how the boy's body is reacting. Every muscle in the boy's body quivers, the tremors spreading from his core to his extremities. Dan knows that reaching a physical limit in the heat of battle is inevitable for any warrior. He imagines Jun surrounded by enemies, knowing that a seizure in that moment would mean certain death. Once the tremors finally subside, the student apologizes for his weakness, feeling a bit better. The teacher acknowledges his determination, but warns him to pay closer attention to his physical state. He offers his help, telling Jun that he must learn to maintain control even during a seizure. With a smirk, the man informs the boy that from now on, he must follow the hall's training methods faithfully. Grateful and determined, Jun promises to train with everything he has, even as Dan tells him to rest. Following that day, Jun spends his time focused on the hall's grueling external arts training. At night, the boy practices his sword forms, relying on physical strength rather than internal energy. He focuses on the mechanics of his body, learning how to manipulate specific muscle groups in his legs. He learns to keep certain muscles loose, while bracing his obliques to maximize the power of his strikes. Jun performs a powerful horizontal sword swing, the air whistling as the blade passes through. As he practices under the moonlight, a familiar voice comments on his performance of the grand span sword art. Lee Si-ha walks into the clearing, her long black hair flowing as she approaches her student. The master smiles, pleased to see that his time with the Iron Tower Hall Lord has paid off. Jun acknowledges her praise but remains humble, knowing he still has a long way to go. Lee Si-ha mentions that as long as he has enough merit, he could take the promotion exam immediately. She explains that promotion brings authority to volunteer for missions and access to more information. Lee Si-ha continues her explanation, pointing out that higher status would grant him the information needed to overcome his 9 yin-blocked meridians. Namgung Jun reflects on her words, realizing that to stand against the sun and moon demonic cult, he must rise through the ranks as quickly as possible. He envisions himself on the grand stage of the provinces, where large-scale battles determine the fate of many lives. In such conflicts, he understands that having the influence of a high rank becomes an essential tool for survival and victory. The master watches him intently, already picturing the young man wielding the legendary heaven-rending sword in the future. She chuckles to herself, teasing that even for a talent like him, she cannot simply hand over such a powerful treasure. Jun turns to her with a start, the name of the sword clearly sparking a deep, visceral reaction within him. Lee Si-ha notices the sudden change in his gaze and asks if he has finally found something that truly interests him. She explains the hierarchy of the department, noting that the title of heaven-rending sword is even more renowned than that of the sword lord. The legend of the blade is intertwined with the position, as the magnificent sword is bestowed only upon the one who leads. Internally, Jun is shaken, remembering the treasured blade he wielded in his past life and wondering if it remains within the society. As they walk through the bamboo grove, the woman asks if he desires the sword, and he confirms it with quiet intensity. She senses that there is more to his desire than mere ambition, suspecting a much deeper and more important reason lies beneath. Despite the mystery of his motivations, she smiles, expressing her genuine excitement to see him reach such heights. To the master, accepting and nurturing such grand aspirations is a fundamental part of her duty to her disciple. Deciding they have done enough for the night, she suggests they end the session, reminding him that rest is also training. Jun agrees, walking behind her as she teases him about the trail of broken hearts his new physique will surely leave behind. The boy looks embarrassed by her playfulness, insisting he has no time for such things while she continues to joke about his future. The scene shifts to the early hours of the morning at the Iron Tower Hall, as the sun begins to peek over the horizon. Inside the archive, a senior disciple remarks on Jun's diligence, nodding that the young man is always active well before dawn. The elder student admits that discussing the intricacies of swordplay with Jun is far too fascinating for him to sleep. He provides Jun with a specific text for the day's study, offering to explain any parts that might be difficult to grasp. Jun walks through the aisles of the library, his mind cataloging the various weapon and movement arts he has already studied. He realizes that unlike his past life's singular focus on the heavy sword, he must now broaden his mastery across all martial arts. Jun is haunted by the ghosts of his old life, staring at the wreckage of his past mistakes. He's determined not to let history repeat itself. He wonders how much more he could have taught his disciples if he'd been a bit more experienced back then. His focus snaps back to the present when he finds a specific manual, the Great Wind Sword Art. It's a technique he hasn't seen in a long time, bringing back a flood of memories. Back in the day, this was one of the signature styles for the Southern Heavenly Palace. Jun used it constantly as the Sword Emperor, relying on its heavy, powerful principles. He finds an annotated version and starts flipping through the pages. The notes are actually impressive, offering a fresh perspective on the chants he knows by heart. A voice calls out his name, and he hears the unmistakable sound of a sword being drawn. Jun looks over his shoulder, not exactly thrilled about being interrupted in the middle of a library. The purple-haired disciple stands there with her blade out, looking for a fight. She isn't here to talk. She uses the tip of her sword to flick his book right off the table. The manual goes sailing into the air, while Jun watches in disbelief. His face darkens as he stares back at her, his patience wearing thin. But then his annoyance turns to pure shock in an instant. She drops into a familiar combat stance, the exact opening move of the Great Wind sword art.